today's last day or tomorrow's last day. Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. The draft is done. It's over. But the summary and the reaction is just getting ready to begin. Hello, everyone. I'm Harper LeBel, along with Logan Landers, our producer, engineer, and co-host today, along with our co-host and founder, Vincent Turner, and our guest today. You're becoming a regular, Emmanuel McFarland, right, with the Falcons Fandemic, Emmanuel, first and foremost, welcome to the show. You're become a familiar face here, and today we're going to talk about the draft, the summary, the reaction, and everything that you got to see on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Most certainly. I appreciate everything. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoy talking football, not just Falcon football. I'm a Falcon fanatic, number one. So I'm like Mr. Vincent Turner there. I'm not a historian like he is, not well versed in the football, but I follow football for a long time. And I mean, to have you guys on stage with me, oh man, it's an honor. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being with us and being available for the show. I think everybody's probably a little sleepy from the weekend and everything that took place, and we're going to discuss that in length. We'll do it just a second. Before we do, we just want to remind you one more time, the Atlanta Vibe professional volleyball here in the Atlanta area, which plays at the Gas South Arena, has their last home game of the season. It is Sunday, May 4th, 6 o'clock at the Gas South Arena. They'll be playing the Omaha Supernovas. They are 18-8. They're good. This is a playoff quality team. They're 10-3 at home, and you can help make that 11-3 by being there. They want to pack the house, and tickets are available at atlantavibe.com. You can go to your Ticketron, get your outlets there, or you can go to Gas South Arena and get your tickets there. But the Atlanta Vibe last home game against the Omaha Supernovas is on Sunday, May 4th. So look forward to you being there, and the Vibe will certainly appreciate you being there as well. All right, gentlemen. Green Bay, Wisconsin was the host of hundreds of thousands of people that wanted to make the trek now. Last year it was in Detroit. They had about 750,000 people. Well, they had 275,000, so 250,000 people, a little bit more than that. What did you overall think in terms of the production? Let's just give credit to the NFL putting an event together where it magnifies everything that is new and fresh about an upcoming season. And Vincent, I'll begin with you. The job that they're doing now, taking something that used to be very boring and very slow and turning it into the event of the spring.
I think it's getting better every year. When you got them having it, the venues and all those people, it's almost like watching the Super Bowl. Everybody getting outside of the tailgate. And I want to say this. Both production companies, ESPN and the NFL Network, them gentlemen did an outstanding job. I want to give kudos to Charles Davis, kudos to Mel Kiper Jr., kudos to Louis Riddick, kudos to Reese Davis. It was very enjoyable, and it's only going to get better every year. And I've really turned my game up as being a fan. I can't wait till next year. Back to you, Hawk.
There's an interesting point that you made there in that you're going to be back. And one of the things that is interesting to me of how they're doing it now, I don't want it to turn into WWE wrestling, where you've got but Emmanuel, let me go to you next. There were certain guests after the first round. The first round is where Goodell comes out for every pick. He has for years. Paul Tagliabue did the same. Pete Rozelle did the same thing. It's almost like your badge of honor. It's probably almost like a job description. That's one of the things that you do is you announce the picks for the first round. Is it getting out of hand though, or is there too much flash and too much sizzle to the point where there has to be something great going on, or are they taking advantage of the market in front of them and you're dealing with probably 16 to 50-year-olds that go, man, the more you do, the more I'm going to love it. Is there any sweet spot that you thought that they hit or maybe have missed in terms of the target audience there? Emmanuel, you first.
Yeah, I mean, you have to like what they've done. I mean, one thing you don't want to have done is what's happening to the NBA where the fanfare has fallen off. And what the NFL has done has torn a page right from the NCAA college football fanfare, and it almost emulated the same playbook sort of when it comes to engaging the fans. And if you look at the image that we have pulled up here, this didn't normally happen in this big of a scale. You know, you have the fan involvement, you have the events leading up to the draft. You know, you have the competitions where the fans can come in and pay to participate in. So they tore a page right from the NCAA. I mean, they say if you can't beat them, join them. So they're not going to uproot the stage of the NCAA. They're not going to do it. Too big of a fanfare, too big of a alumni. But at the same time, going to this stage at this level, you picked the perfect city at this time that needed the revenue, and the fan was waiting on it. So and from the reaction from the fans, you talking about the neighborhood itself. I was told that the room, the hotel rooms and the people were Airbnbs leasing these rooms out for like $16,000 a night, and they were sold out. I mean, there was not a place around where you could even get a room, and restaurants just flourished with it. So the NFL did a perfect, executed a perfect plan here and getting Green Bay as being the host city.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Green Bay itself is the smallest of all of the NFL franchise cities. The tallest building there is a 7-story hospital. You're looking at the stadium, in my opinion, from where we're looking at right now, is to our left. The parking lot and everything for Lambeau is across the street, there's a building along the left-hand side of this of the picture that we're looking at right now. But Logan, I'm obviously looking at a picture from just before when the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or Prince is ready to go out on stage. This can't be an NFL draft picture. There's no way there'd be that many people. Who'd have thunk it?
No, I mean, you got a great point. And I mean, with Green Bay, we saw, previous years in Detroit, right? I mean, fans were just lining up outside to get in here and to watch and to see, the commissioner and all the great representatives, former players, et cetera, go up there and announce those picks. And I mean, I saw where local just houses were charging $100 for parking because that's how insane it was, that people were making a quick buck just to, hey, park your car here for, it's $50 an hour or whatever it may be. So like I said, it's just, it's turning into like a tailgate, like you mentioned, like a party, it feels like, which I think is great. And now, of course, yes, you can go over the top with it. You can have a WWE style type of event. You can add some pyrotechnics, right? You can add the smoke machines if you want to go all out with it. But I think what they're doing now, and as Vincent mentioned with the with the coverage, right? The draft coverage, the analysts and the experts and whatnot that were on television, I thought that it all looked well. It all flowed nice. The graphics were nice and clean. You could read them all, and I thought that overall they knocked it apart.
All right, Logan, I'm going to stick with you. Give me at least one. Now, you might have 2 or 3, but what stood out to you in terms of it was either funny or it was well planned or it was something you go, I would never have thought of it doing it that way, but that seemed to work. Was there anything in particular that sticks out for you in the 3 days? This is Woodstock, right? This is a festival, but they turned it into something that has grown into a part of our culture now where if you're a guy and you like football at all, you're going to kind of tune into this. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you?
The one thing that stood out to me, and whenever we were watching the draft on that first round there, is just how quick the picks were going by. I mean, it felt like it was no time at all between, we read, all right, hey, the Titans select this guy. It's like, now there's a trade. Now they've selected this person. It went by very quick. I felt like it shaved the whole hour off compared to, it felt like last year and years prior. An interesting concept. I did hear that Roger Goodell was on the Pat McAfee show, I think the day after, and had floated the idea around that they even shortened the lengths even more. So instead of a 10-minute selection, they'd have 7. And if you wanted to, you could have an extra 2 minutes in your back pocket you could use. So interesting concept, and you can tell that they're not wanting to, drag it on for 5-6 hours, however long it would be, and it has been at times. But I think we got the first round was done, at least for our show, I think it was about 3.5 hours, which I felt very short compared to years past. So I thought the pacing was a lot better this year.
Yeah, real quick, I want to follow up with you and just say, on the decibel level, how bad were the boos for Roger Goodell each and every time that he went out there? Did he break any records? Was it like listening to Queen or The Who in terms of the amount of noise that the boos were?
It's always the first time he walks out is going to be the loudest because you haven't seen him yet. It's the anticipation. And I think he's learned to embrace it, in a way as much as you can if you're Roger Goodell. But it's, every time he walks out there, there's boos. If people had tomatoes, they throw them at him if they could. Yep. But definitely broke some Richter scales, I think, in that regard.
And my follow-up in terms of Roger Goodell, has his vertical gotten any higher? Because when he jumps up to do a chest pump, he's still only getting about maybe 3 credit cards off the ground. He does not have any his shoes need he should probably invest in a pair of Air Nikes, or you know what I mean? He's got to
get that, or the like the Skechers lifts that they promote sometimes. Something. Just get a couple of those just to get a couple squats, and maybe just go to the combine, run the combine once, get you warmed up.
Let's go.
That could help out.
We'll have the front office combine and see what these guys can do, and then kind of let them be criticized by some of the players. You made a very interesting point, Logan. We were talking about Jacksonville. Remember, they had traded with Cleveland, and then Cleveland moves back. And I'll be doggone if we hadn't even begun talking about Cleveland, and the Raiders were on the clock, and they picked Ashton Gente. And we weren't done with our previous sentence, and we had to start talking. And that happened probably 4 or 5 times during the show.
It did. And like I said, I mean, normally it felt like in previous years, these teams would take, if not the entire 10 minutes, they'd take, at least 6+. But I don't know if there was a memo that was sent out, if these teams were just kind of locked and loaded with who they wanted. But I mean, they were just firing away at picks, especially like I said, the top 10, that took maybe 30, 40 minutes, if that. And most of that was just the commercials in between.
Yeah, it seemed like it went fast, Vincent. I mean, from my perspective, while we're trying to discuss stuff and, we've got things to say about this guy and that guy, next thing you know, we're getting advice that, hey, the selection is in. So the speed in which they're doing it and filling time in between, I think that has been managed quite well. And for our first show, I thought we did a pretty good job of at least being able to stop in mid-sentence and move on. We'll make the pick. We'll let you know who it is. But guess what? The other team is on the clock. And if their selection is in, we're going to move with it. That was a challenge for us.
I always say this, and I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about production, but I'm just a guy that like energy. I like pace. I like structure. And doing the draft on our show, that's what I enjoyed the most. We had energy. We had the pace. We had the structure. What I mean by that, it wasn't no law of no misinformation. Everybody playing their part. And then going back, and I didn't see any of the first round because we was doing our show, but I went back and watched the second and third rounds on ESPN and the NFL Network. And then I watched the final rounds on both networks, and I was going back and forth. And one thing is I say, the ball didn't drop. Oh, the mic didn't drop. Because I'm a guy, energy, the pace, and the structure. Back to you, Harp.
Before we go to Emmanuel, was there anything in particular that ESPN did in their coverage that you got a real good feeling about, or well done, or that was funny? I really enjoyed that. Was there anything that stuck out for you? Vincent, was there anything for you?
Just the excellent way they did their information. Just everything was down to the T. The information they had on the players, the in depth, going all the way back to their high schools. I love that part about it. Just, I think A+ all across the board. Back to you, Hawk.
When Clay Matthews III, a Green Bay hero, gets up and says, "I got a letter from the president." And it says this, that, and hey, I wish everybody. And then the Bears still suck. Emmanuel, I'm glad I swallowed, because I'd have spit out my milk if I were watching it live. That was so well timed. And that's a little bit of that WWE thing, right? Where, let me tell you something, brother. There was some Hulk Hogan in that. But I think it was well done. You're smiling. Obviously, it made an impression on you. There were so many good things that they did to meet to meet the need of a guy that just wants to watch how his team does.
Exactly. Once again, it's all about, and that's what the draft is about. It's about those players and engaging with the fans. And the fanfare was all the way through. You didn't have a whole bunch of hoopla about what each player can do, or any speeches, long drawn out speeches that was kind of useless. Everybody knows these players. I mean, these guys have been watched since college days, the combine, all the way up through now up to the stage level. So you didn't have a whole lot of drawn out statistics being thrown out there that people didn't want to hear. They just ready to get to the draft. And and up until the Falcons pick, like Mr. Vincent said, and it seemed to have been going pretty fast, and I'm like, when it got to us, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Here comes the drama, when it was the Falcons pick, because the pick was in, but they took a long time for it to get to the stage for some reason. So everybody thought that it was going to be a trade, and even before then, Mr. Fontenot was in his press conference. He kept hinting on the fact of either trading up or trading back. So they drew the attention to the idea of the Falcons wanting to trade. So everybody's like, okay, what in the world are the Falcons going to do now? Because the Falcons are known to make that pick. Like, everybody suspects that we're going edge rusher, but no, we didn't go edge rusher. We're going with the best player available. So they did the little things like that kept things in perspective as far as the fanfare. So they kept the fans engaged. And if you're a guy like me that like to just sit back and just watch the draft, I don't want to see a whole bunch of useless commercials that don't even pertain to football. So I mean, I'm like, hey man, they got it right this time. So next year, I'm looking forward to even more draft coverage.
Yeah, interesting to me also. There was that cringe-worthy moment where Bill Polian for the Indianapolis Colts and Mel Kiper had an on-air disagreement on about a selection. And kudos to Mel for taking the criticism and then issuing it right back. Well, I think you should have picked somebody. That's his opinion, right? He's entitled. And Bill Polian says, I think you're crazy. I don't know why you were listening to this guy in the first place. Mel had one of the great lines of all time a couple years later when he says, when the Jets picked Jeff Lageman, he goes, for obvious reasons, the New York Jets are proving that they have no idea what the draft is actually about. Funny line, right? It goes down in history. They even played a highlight of that. Aside from Shedeur, was there anything, Emmanuel, in your mind that was a cringeworthy moment? We'll talk about Shedeur in a second, but was there anything other than that? Because that seemed to last all the way up until early in the fifth round.
What my thing is, I was more in tune to seeing what trade was going to happen. Because I knew something was going to happen, and everybody was kind of sitting on the edge of their seat, like, okay, something is crazy about to happen. And when Cleveland traded their pick, no one saw that coming. Everybody was thinking like it was going to happen around that 10th, 11th, 12th pick. And I'm like, when Cleveland made that pick, everybody was, okay, who are they going to pick on this defense to put behind Myles Garrett? And that was the whole idea, either Mason Graham or Malachi Starks. But it wasn't really a cringe moment. It was the anticipation that they kept at the forefront before each pick. And I like that.
All right, let's get into this real quick, Emmanuel. While we were there, was that a great move, a tactful move by Cleveland to move back and pay a little bit less for a guy that they probably ended up wanting in the first place, but didn't want to have to select at number 2, and they picked another pick on top of that?
That was phenomenal pick. I mean, there were a couple of moves as far as general managers that happened that worked out for the team. And that was probably one of the best ones on the stage outside of Terry Fontenot with his move. But to grab 2 players, they kind of like got that 2-for-1 deal like what we got. And but the one move that actually made sense but didn't make sense was picking up Shedeur Sanders. Yes, everybody kind of knew Shedeur Sanders was going to go high in the draft, but if everybody remember, way back before the draft, everybody predicted that that's where Shedeur Sanders was going anyway, outside of going to the Saints. Everybody just knew he was going to the Cleveland Browns. My thing is, why all the hoopla of the prank call and all, and letting him fall as far as he did? Why all the hoopla? Everybody knew he was going to the Browns. That's where he was destined to go. If you remember Deion Sanders' comment on one interview, he even knew his son was going there. but I don't know if everything happened the way it did, if it laid out the way it did. Was it predicted? Was it one of those things where was it something that they wanted to keep the NFL or keep it being watched? And that's why I hate the fact that social media has played a big, huge part in any sport, especially the NFL. And I mean the NFL, the NBA. And what I don't want is for it to happen in the NFL. It's such a negative outlook. It's not a point. And now since you brought up Shedeur Sanders, you have to wonder why Atlanta. You're talking about a team that Shedeur wasn't on his radar anyway. So why Atlanta? I understand he was a player in the draft, and and everybody have contact information, but why Atlanta? Shedeur, there was no mention of Shedeur even coming to Atlanta. Nobody even had Atlanta on the radar. So why would he have Shedeur Sanders information laid out like the way he did? But I understand, it's a social media thing. It's the big news. Shedeur Sanders is a big player. He's a social media guy. But I just don't like the fact that Atlanta put themselves in the mix of allowing themselves to get put on that stage in a negative light. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And I'm sorry, go ahead. I interrupted somebody. Go ahead.
No, you good.
All right. Here's the thing. Let's start going into the draft analysis, and we'll look at the AFC North first, which Cleveland is in, right? You got Tennessee picking first. They were 3-14. Well, so was Cleveland, and so were the Giants. But as the draft order goes, it was Tennessee that ends up picking first. And the Browns move back, get another pick. Here are the names. Mason Graham, they get him with their number 1 selection, number 5 overall, their first rounder. Carson Schwestinger from UCLA, linebacker. Everybody's saying that's a steal. I didn't see him being a first rounder, but he was the number 1 pick in the second rounder, and that's fine. They filled a need there. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Are you kidding me? That's a steal. Vincent, we were talking about Errol Fannin as soon as we started doing some of these college shows. He's listed as a tight end. He'll be an H-back probably, or a slot receiver who's lightning quick that can go down the middle of the field from Bowling Green. They get Dylan Gabriel and Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. Vincent, I'm sure you love that. And then Shedeur with no picks coming after the 5th rounder. Goodness gracious, they had a great draft, in my opinion. They're a better team today than they were just last Thursday. Vincent, start with you.
No question about it. I gave them a grade of a B. I think when you look overall, they got impact players. They got players that have played big-time football, and most of all, they improved offensively based on the fact Nick Chubb is not going back to Cleveland. The situation with Deshaun Watson, to get 2 running backs and Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson, you can be no more pleased. And most of all, the quarterback position, I think it's going to be really, I want to say, must-see TV going into Cleveland's training camp. I think the Browns did an excellent job. And I would say this, the Cleveland Browns and the city of Cleveland, y'all going to be on watch now. Social media is all over Cleveland simply because y'all brought the young man's son that should do it. Think about this. If Aaron Rodgers signed with Pittsburgh, the AFC North is going to be on fire because think about the star power. LSU, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying Shedeur Sanders if he wins the job in the camp, and then you bring in the man from Chico, California. But we're going to have fun with the AFC North. Back to you, Harp.
Yeah, someone may win the division with an 8-9 record. They're all going to beat each other. Logan, who won the year? I like what Cleveland did, but then again, we can look at some of the other teams in the division. Who got better? Who did a better job of getting better?
Yeah, I thought, Cleveland, did really well. The only pick was kind of questioning. Like you said, the Schwestinger pick seemed like kind of not a lot of people had him going in the round he went in. So I thought maybe that a little bit of a reach there. And also I'm still scratching my head about why they ended up getting both Dylan Gabriel as well as Shedeur Sanders. They have 5 quarterbacks on the roster now. You can't keep all of them. You have those 2 you just drafted. You also got, as you mentioned, Deshaun Watson. You got Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. I mean, you have a just way too many cooks in the kitchen type situation there. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Deshaun's not going to play a whole lot, if any, this season due to that injury he suffered. But I think that I'm with Vincent on this one. I'll give him a B, maybe a B plus. So I thought that overall, I love the Harold Fannin Jr. pick. Love just watching his film coming out of Bowling Green. So I thought he did a good job. The Ravens, my God, it felt like they drafted 40 people. They had a ton of picks. Of course, Malachi Starks being their top selection there. And also another guy who a lot of people thought maybe fell in the draft, and that's Mike Green out of Marshall. He got drafted in round 2. I think that you pair him with just all of the great players out of Marshall that or out of Baltimore. That's going to be a very just a dirty type of defense, I think, come this upcoming season. Then let's move over to Pittsburgh here. I thought that overall that Pittsburgh looked solid, right? They had some good players, but I think that when you look at the Bengals, I think the Bengals might have they're probably at the bottom of the totem pole here. I've seen a lot of people say they might have reached on some guys that a lot of people weren't thrilled that I've seen with the Shamar Stewart pick. Demetrius Knight's a good player out of South Carolina. They got Dylan Fairchild for the O-line help, but I would probably put the Bengals at the bottom of the AFC North for just pure draft. But I'm kind of torn here because I like Cleveland, I like Baltimore, but I might have to give Baltimore the slight edge in that one, just based off of just the amount of numbers they had and the chances they have to hit with the players this season.
Real quick, Logan, I'll stick with you for 1 second before we go to Emmanuel. If the Pittsburgh Steelers cannot sign Aaron Rodgers, this has got to be the worst draft that they've ever had, because you have no quarterbacks. You've lost everybody from last year and even previous to that. Yes, you have a quarterback or two on the roster, but if Aaron Rodgers pulls a fast one and goes, yeah, you know what, I'm really enjoying this retirement stuff. Nobody's telling me what to do. I'm just going to sit this out. They can't afford that, can they?
No, they. The interesting thing is that once the rounds kept going on, you kept hearing, all right, Shadur Sanders, are you going to the Steelers, right? That's what everyone kept saying. And it never happened. It never happened. They did it with a quarterback, as we know. They went with the winner Will Howard. In I believe the 6th round they got him. So late round steal, but when you look at who else is on the roster, I mean, you've got Mason Rudolph, I think, and I'm not even sure who else is on the roster right now at quarterback, but you basically kind of pushed all your chips in and said, all right, Aaron Rodgers, you got to sign here or else we're kind of might have to make a trade or we're kind of out of luck here. So they're taking a big gamble here. But obviously I think they feel comfortable about it since they didn't draft any quarterbacks prior to the 6th round.
Yeah, that's just a hypothetical that I was thinking of. Obviously, they are protecting themselves. And the reason they didn't make a selection earlier is because I think Aaron or his agent or any of his representatives would have said, just give us some time, just relax, we're going to be fine. But even Cameron Hayward said earlier in the offseason, hey, would you just please sign with us and get this over with? So there's some impatience there in the Steel City. Emmanuel, your first impressions, one about Cleveland, and then finish up with the division.
Okay. I think Cleveland, like Mr. Turner said, had a phenomenal draft. They shored up that quarterback competition in camp. Yes, it's a lot there, but at the same time, are we really dependent on them and looking for Flacco or either Deshaun Watson to either be on the team with this much competition in camp? But Cleveland did a phenomenal job. I thought they were going to go and shore up that defense a little bit more, adding a little bit more production behind Myles Garrett since they signed him so much and invested a lot in that defense. Now, my steal in that division would be Pittsburgh. I was actually surprised that Will Howard went in the 6th round. I had him going up higher, but I think Will Howard is a sleeper. I think he's going to catch a lot of people off guard. He's going to end up being the starting quarterback. Aaron probably will start, but I think he's going to run into the same problem that he had since he left Green Bay. But Pittsburgh did a great job in getting and got a steal in Will Howard. I don't know if a lot of people have watched his footage, the way this young man carried himself. Outside of Cam Ward, I didn't see anybody else as far as quarterback that carried themselves and came to camp prepared. When you interview a quarterback, there are a lot of tangibles that you look for. And Will Howard, when he did his interview with who he did that with, but he just did everything right, answered all the questions right, and there was no hesitation when it came to answering the questions. And the questions that were asked were like hard questions. And for me, they would have been hard. But for him, he kind of like just ran through it off the board, no problems, and pretty much took over the interview. And he was like interviewing himself. So Will Howard for me would be the steal for me for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm just looking like Logan said, I'm just looking to see what Cincinnati, what they didn't address. Because they tried to address everything across the board. You know, nothing was like, they just kind of like grabbed everything from every position: linebacker, defensive end, guard, tackle, running back. So there was no real look as to saying, okay, we need this. We're going to concentrate on here. Like we went all defense in the draft, and a lot of these teams kind of like went either all offense or went all receivers, but all skilled players. Cincinnati didn't have that identities laid out, and I'm interested to see how that works out for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned Pittsburgh. If I can stay with them for a second, 5 of their 7 players were on the defensive side of the ball. 2 tackles. They got. I think Jack Sawyer will turn out to be a real good pick for them. I'm just projecting that. You know, you get him and T.J. Watt, if he can learn a second move or whatever. You got Will Howard, also from the champion Ohio State Buckeyes. So well done there by Pittsburgh. If you sign Aaron Rodgers, if you don't, then I think it's all for naught because you've really hamstrung your organization by not having a capable first rounder. Cincinnati was Shamar Stewart. There's some folks that were saying, no, he's going to be amazing. And there's others that are going, look at his numbers. He doesn't have any numbers. Vincent, that's been your thing. The production, it's not there.
Yes. That was the only problem I had with him coming into the draft. He looks the part. He's an excellent athlete out of the Miami, Florida area high school scene. I believe he might have not been. I think he was the number 1 player coming out of high school when he signed with Texas A&M. But for me, since we're talking about the Bengals, I think the one player that's going to surprise everybody is Dylan Fairchild, the offensive guard out of Georgia. He's the one player that is going to solidify the offensive line, and Joe Burrow's going to have more time to throw the football. And we already know if you give him time, and based on the Bengals re-signing both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, somebody's going to be chicken meat, such as barbecue, as we say down in the 901. It's going to be some good eating, and some barbecue sauce going to be sold over there in that AFC North. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Well, Dylan was considered one of the best guards. Jalen Rivers, 6'6", 309 out of Miami was another. So they invested in their offensive line here a couple of times. I agree. The philosophy is pretty simple. You keep your quarterback upright. You got a chance to win with those receivers that you mentioned. They ended up with Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech in the 6th round. That was the last of their picks. So we don't know, right? We got to wait for training camp to open up and see how many of these guys can actually do it with a real NFL ball in their hands, so to speak. We'll find out. Any final thoughts before we move on to the AFC South?
No, sir.
We're good. All right. Well, let's stop.
Oh, go ahead.
I like the green suit on Mr. Stewart here. Looked good, popped well, and we saw a lot of flashy suits there at the draft as always.
Yeah. Travis Hunter had a pink suit, didn't he? Right.
I believe so,
pink? Yeah. All right. I don't know if he's going to wear it just once because if it goes back on, but there's no pink in Jacksonville. All right. But speaking of Jacksonville, they're part of the AFC South. Houston, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Tennessee. Obviously, with the number 1 overall pick, Tennessee with Cam Ward, it's that they addressed their need. They've got hundreds of holes to fill in their roster, but there are many that gave them a B. Olufemi Adejo, an edge rusher, Kevin Winston, a safety. How do you think Tennessee did? Vincent, we'll start with you and your home state. Even though it's not in the 901, it's a part of it. How did the Titans end up making their team better?
Much loyalty. Main position, they needed a quarterback. If they had a quarterback last season, if Will Levis plays anywhere halfway decent in a lot of close games they lost last year, Tennessee probably wouldn't even be having a first-round pick. One point I want to bring up, their head coach, Brian Callahan, is a good football coach. He was the offensive coordinator when Joe Burrow came in the league. The next year, in the second year Joe Burrow was in the league, they go to the Super Bowl. So think about that. But as far as the Titans draft, two guys I'm very impressed with. Gunnar Ham, the tight end out of Texas. You got some ties there, Harper. He's going to help Mr. Cam Ward out a lot. And then the offensive guard that we did early in our draft process, Jackson Slater, Sacramento State. He's going to be a player. So I'm giving the Tennessee Titans a strong B+. They filled all their needs, and all they got to do, as I just mentioned, Cam Ward just got to give them a little more solid play at the quarterback position, such as do not turn the ball over, as Mr. Will Levis did last year. Back to you, Harper.
It's okay to punt, guys. It's okay. It's not okay to turn the ball over. Logan, I agree with what Vincent was saying. 6 of the 9 picks are offense, so they obviously know that they've got some work to do there. Some young wide receivers, a new tight end, a guard, and obviously a quarterback. There are hundreds of things to fill there, but at least they addressed it. And I think they did so in the best possible manner there with the first overall pick.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone's always going to chatter beforehand saying, oh, are they going to trade the number 1 overall pick? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? And obviously I thought it was a smart move. They kept their pick. They went with the great quarterback in Cam Ward, someone who is obviously a hard worker, right? Was at Incarnate World, went to did some work at Washington State, then ultimately had a stellar career at Miami to end things out before ultimately becoming the number 1 overall selection for the Tennessee Titans, who were hoping that he can kind of be, the guy that leads their franchise as their top first, number 1 overall pick. It's their third one in franchise in just Tennessee franchise history here. So a lot of pressure on the young man, but I think he can live up to it. As for the rest of the Titans draft class, you mentioned a lot of offensive help here. They also had some guys like Chimere Dike from Florida, Gunnar Helm, who we talked about out there in Texas. They also grabbed Aominer from Stanford. And Jackson Slater, a guy who I remember Vincent and Harper all did a show on, is kind of that hidden gem, right? They got him. Not even a super late round. They picked him up in round 5, and someone who's a hard worker, and I think can definitely do some good work on the line. But I don't know if we're in for quite a Houston Texans-esque run here, where they drafted C.J. Stroud and they kind of just took off that next year. I don't know if Tennessee's there quite yet. They've got some good pieces, and I definitely think they're a better ball club after the draft than they were before, bar none. But it might take a little bit of time just for that entire new. It's pretty much a new unit they're bringing on in here to just kind of mesh and gel and get that chemistry together. But overall, just on paper, it looks great.
Well, you mentioned Houston. I'm not perplexed. It's their draft. They get to do what they want. But trading back in the first to go early in the second, they got 2 number 2s, 2 number 3s, and a 4. So they had 5 picks in the first 4 rounds. To try to take advantage. Jaden Higgins is a speedster out of Iowa State. I get it. Then they get Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. So obviously they liked the Cyclones there, but I don't know how they helped the roster. There were a lot of other needs that they had. They win the division. There were a lot of teams like Jacksonville and Tennessee, Emmanuel, that needed a lot of work. But did the Texans do enough to be able to keep pace and say we're going to win the division again?
It wasn't a whole lot that the Houston Texans are going to have to improve on to keep winning that division. Because Tennessee went in, they got their quarterback, which is what was drastically needed. However, you still have to keep that quarterback upright. I don't think they did enough to address the O-line issue. Will Levis, he made quite a few mistakes last season, but at the same time, it was seemed rushed. And like Drake May, he had to go on a run a lot. And these two are not scrambling quarterbacks. These guys are pocket quarterbacks. So you have to keep these guys upright. And I don't think neither team did enough to address the offensive line problems. As far as Houston goes, I think they're going to win the division again this year. I think they should have, and they did, address skill player positions, and which was one of the things that they saw that they could use some help in. But Tennessee, I think if they they got the quarterback that they wanted. I think it's going to drastically improve. I think they're going to be in contention for the division. So like I said, they just have to keep them upright. And Cam Ward's a kind of a scrambling quarterback too. So, I mean, that improves in itself.
Well, Indianapolis, I think with Tyler Warren falling back to them, their offense will be a little bit better, especially going down the middle. And TJ Tuimaloa from Ohio State as an edge rusher. So my first two picks, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm okay with that, right? Does anyone disagree with me? They say, no, that's ridiculous. I think they helped out their offense and defense respectively in terms of giving someone that their quarterback can throw to and also a guy that's going to get after the opponent's quarterback. The rest of it, though, kind of, not being disrespectful, just, I mean, a tackle, running back. They did get Riley Leonard. I was surprised that Riley Leonard went in the 6th round. Was that anyone else shocked by that? I didn't know if he was going to go, but, congratulations to him. Takes the Fighting Irish to the national championship game. Athletically, got no problem at all, but his accuracy was something that everybody was kind of scratching their head. I don't know where we put this guy. You got to complete 65% or better in the NFL, and he wasn't anywhere close to that.
I'm not surprised at all. If you look at how Anthony Richardson performed last year, you had that point where he gave up on a couple of plays, took himself out the game, and you don't never want to see that in a quarterback. When you have a quarterback, you don't quite know where his mental is or his physical. You have to bring in some competition, get a backup in there to compete for the job. Like you said, you never know where this guy's going. He didn't have a bad season, but he could have had a better season too, barring all the distraction that he encountered. But I'm not surprised at all that Riley Leonard went there. I think Tyler Warren is going to be that guy for them. He's going to give Richardson a couple of outs. Richardson, he had to go on a run a lot last year. And Tyler Warren is that guy, that tight end that could, get open consistently and give Quentin Robinson another option as far as skill player.
Okay. Well, any other thoughts before we move on? Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I thought the Leonard pick is interesting, right, for Indianapolis because the whole, as you mentioned, Emmanuel, the situation with Anthony Richardson, a lot of people have already kind of soured on him. A lot of the fans are saying, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And that's not good for a young quarterback who was just drafted 2-3 years ago, early in the 1st round. And I don't know if Riley Leonard's going to provide, stiff competition, but I mean, if Anthony Richardson struggles, I think the Colts have kind of proved. They said, "Hey, look, we have this young quarterback here too that played well at Notre Dame. We saw how well they did in the college football playoffs. That hey, it basically is we've got someone here now to if something ever does go wrong, we've got a valuable backup now." So I thought that was interesting, but I thought that the Colts getting Tyler Warren, that was an absolute steal. I thought that, whenever he was not the first tight end selected when Chicago, and I know we'll talk about them in a little bit, whenever they did not go with Tyler Warren, I was blown away. But I thought they did a really good job there. For the Texans, I think we're all kind of in the same boat that they're just kind of, they had a couple of good guys, but I wasn't, really stoked if I'm a Texans fan coming out of the draft. Like I said, some solid players, but overall, nothing insane. And of course, for Jacksonville, right? They got the two-way superstar in Travis Hunter. And then I feel like, unfortunately, for everyone else who got drafted, all the media attention went to Travis. But they got some other good players, right? I like Caleb Ransall, the 3rd-round pick they got out of Tulane. Solid player there. And also Jack Kaiser, another Notre Dame player, linebacker in the 4th round. Another solid pick up there. So I thought that of all the teams here, I thought Tennessee probably did the best, and I think Jacksonville's right there with them, all in all.
And let's not forget now the other quarterback that's over in Indianapolis, Daniel Jones, who kind of wasn't a bad quarterback at in New York, but I mean, he could come on and earn himself a starting spot. Presumably, right now, I mean, he's a solid second number 2.
Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon. When Matt Ryan went to Indianapolis, the biggest thing that they said, "Hey, can we keep him upright?" An immobile quarterback to keep him right with the offensive line that they had. They were running the ball great. They just needed that one piece to be able to get the ball down the field, and they've struggled ever since. So it'd be interesting to see what the Colts end up doing. Any final thoughts before we move to the AFC East?
Right quick, I would like to say something before we move on, if it's all great with the panel in the AFC South questions. Let me start with Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson, if you're watching me today, Vincent Turner, help is on the way, because Tyler Warren is probably pound for pound the best player in the draft. Look what he did at Penn State. Then I like DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State. So don't worry, Anthony. All you got to do is read the playbook, because help is on the way. Jacksonville, a lot of people want to give him an A+. Sunshine, Trevor's Lawrence. You struggled last year. You was banged up. Your offensive line didn't protect you. But you did have an outstanding rookie wide receiver, Brian Thomas, that played really well and got Rookie of the Year votes. I like what Jacksonville done. Of course, they got the best player, Travis Hunter. He's going to be able to help on both sides of the ball. Remember this name as I move on from Jacksonville's draft. The most important player they took in is Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame. 5-year player, very experienced player, and very productive. Watch Jacksonville defense go to another level. And finally, I got to disagree with you, Harper. I love you. But the Houston Texans, to me, hit it right. Yes, they love Iowa State because them two studs can be productive. But don't forget the offensive tackle they took out of Minnesota, Mr. Estrie. That guy's a player. Done my fighting words on the AFC South. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
All right. Well, let's recap that by moving on, and we're going to go on the AFC North. Guys, it's been Buffalo's division for the last couple of years, and if there's any word that they have that they're going to repeat over and over, at least for this draft, it's defense, defense, defense. 7 of their first 8 guys were defensive side of the ball guys, and Maxwell Hairston out of Kentucky is their number 1 pick. TJ Sanders out of South Carolina, who's a gigantic human being, great motor him. Landon Jackson was a little bit of a surprise. If you remember at the Combine, he's the one that had the 40-plus inch vertical. Nobody knew much about him. And next thing you know, Pig Suey, they're talking about this guy who's 6'6", 268 pounds, and he is beating everybody in some of these tests. Well, heck, why didn't he do it on the field for the Razorbacks? I didn't know much about him before then, but you know what? They were impressed, and they get him. They get a defensive tackle, a cornerback. They get a little bit of help out of tight end Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech. I think that was a nice pickup for him. So Buffalo right now is the cream of the crop there. I think they got better. Now, we're not going to know it for about 2 or 3 years till all these guys develop, but certainly they addressed some of their issues. Tell me where I'm wrong. Logan, we'll start with you.
So I thought let's just start with Buffalo first and foremost, right? I mean, a team that's been dominating here in the last 5+ years out there in the East since Tom Brady basically left in the New England. They've taken over, and I thought that the Bills did really well, right? Like you said, defense, just knocked it into their heads. Love the Maxwell Hairston pick. He said he's really confident. Said, I don't know what other corner's better than me. You love to see that. Your corners, of course, coming out of Kentucky. I like the TJ Sanders pick as well out of South Carolina. Then, as you mentioned, Landon Jackson, a guy we talked about here on the show before. Interesting guy. And the thing with the Bills, they went super SEC heavy early on in the draft. They got Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. You mentioned Jackson Hawes by way of Georgia Tech here. So I thought overall the Bills looked great. I thought that they did a really good job. Let's flip over to the Patriots now. They were tied to Will Campbell before the draft even happened. That was who they went with. And obviously, I think that Will is a great player. We'll see how he can do out there in New England. But the rest of the draft, I like the Travion Henderson pick out of Ohio State. I think he can pair really well with Ramondre Stevenson if he has a bounce-back year overall. They went with Jared Wilson out of Georgia in the late 3rd round. I also like the Braden Swinson pick, LSU, round 5 overall. So I think that when you look at that, I like the a couple of the picks out there for New England. Over at the Jets, they didn't have as many selections, but they went Armand Mimbaugh, number 7 overall, right? You got to have that O-line. You got to protect Justin Fields if you want any type of success this year. So they filled that hole there. They got Arian Smith. They got Mason Taylor, Tyler Barron, as well as a late-round pick out there in Miami. So I thought I really liked the Jets selections overall. I thought that while they might not have the most amount, that I thought that overall the quality was solid. And then Miami, the team where everyone had their hands up and said, wait a minute, who did we pick in the first round? When they went with Kenneth Grant at their selection. And look, he's a big guy, just absolute, just monster there on the line. I think that's going to be a good selection there. And they also drafted 2 other defensive tackles in the draft as well. Jordan Phillips from Maryland, and also their final pick in round 7, once again, another Georgia Tech graduate, going to be Zeke Biggers. And also, you mentioned they got Quinn Ewers and Ollie Gordon II, a guy who just a handful of years ago, Oklahoma State, was talk of the town. He was like the Ashton Genty before Ashton kind of broke out with the numbers he was putting up. So I liked the 2 that I really came with that I was super impressed with. I liked Miami and I like Buffalo, obviously. I think Buffalo, the rich kind of keep getting richer with how well they performed. And I think their draft status and their draft quality is good. And, I get a lot of people kind of dogged on the Kenneth Grant pick, but I think just in terms of just quality, in terms of just they covered a lot of positions. I like Miami overall. So those are my kind of top 2 in this AFC East draft.
Emmanuel, give me your perspective here on the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree with Logan. I like Miami in this one. They addressed that defense with 3 great defensive tackles. I was surprised to see Zeke Biggers go as far down as he did. The way he played against SEC teams, like I said, I'm surprised he went down that far. And me, I'm a defensive guy, guys. So when you play against SEC teams, you perform well, I think you're one heck of an athlete, right? But I think Miami has a lot to look forward to. The only thing I don't like about Miami is the fact that they didn't address the offensive line. Tua has been hurt every season since he's been here, and it's come from you tend to either it's the wrong hit or too many hits. Either way, it's bad for a quarterback like Tua. So that's the only thing that I took away from Miami. New England, same thing. They didn't address the offensive line. Drake May, he stayed on a run. He is not a scrambling quarterback. And they need to have brought in more than I think they got one offensive guard. No, they didn't get any. But they didn't address it at all. And when you have a quarterback that scrambled as much as he did, and he's another pocket passer, and he made a lot of decisions last season on the run. So you have to protect him. We don't want him running, trying to make decisions. Buffalo.
Hold on, Emmanuel. Hold on. I just want to make a correction here. With Will Campbell, now, are you going to move your right or left tackle? Will's pretty much going to be the plug-and-play starter there with their number 1 pick.
Right.
As early. That wasn't a surprise to anybody.
Right.
So picking 4th overall and addressing that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as an issue that Mike Vrabel might end up going, look, I'm not going to remove either one of my tackles from the start. I'm just going to move one of them to another position because it looks like Will is either going to be my strong or my weak tackle for the next 15 years.
Yeah. And that's one thing I didn't look into. I didn't look to see where the pressure came from when it came from that offensive line. Yeah. Anytime you're a quarterback, you have a pocket quarterback, you want to be a pocket quarterback. He has to get on a run, something that he's not normally doing. It's not a good look. Whether it came from the outside, inside, up the middle, you have to address your issues. And for New England, that was their issue. Their issue was not skill positions. Their issue was not, they had a few issues on defense, but at the same time, you have to start somewhere trying to establish an identity as far as on the offensive line. So you got to score. They say defense wins championship, but you got to score points too. And if you can't score points because your quarterback is not making good decisions or he can't execute because he's always under duress, you have to address those issues.
Anything else before we go to Vincent? You good? I guess so. All right, Vincent, tell me your perspective here. Bills, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots.
I'm going to start with the Bills. I think they had a very good draft. Now, the movie Sinners came out, 2 weeks ago, right? Did very well at the box office. Michael B. Jordan. Now, who's the female? What's her name? Hallie Sinfield, right? If you can look that up for me, Logan, that's on Josh Allen's fiance, right?
You're correct.
So
yep. Steinfeld, yep.
I think the Bills did an excellent job because, see, Josh Allen He's got that type of firepower now. That means the only thing left for him to kind of, I want to say, go above that is win the Super Bowl. And the Bills came very close last year. A lot of people saying there was some calls in that AFC championship game that should have went Buffalo's way. But I love the draft. I think somebody just said they went all SEC, the best football conference of all of America. Yes, I did say it, and I'm going to take it to my grave. Mr. Vincent Turner. Maxwell Harrison, excellent pick. Gonna start 4.3 guy at the combine. TJ Sanders, South Carolina, very good football player. You even said it, Harp. You said you really loved him on the interior. And Harp, don't look around because you know Landon Jackson. Most of all, one thing about him, he got that mortar and he had that crazy vertical. But you know where he went? The Hogs are gonna be calling in Buffalo.
Pick Suey. Oh, I know.
Now with the Miami Dolphins, Emmanuel, I got to disagree with you. You say they didn't address the offensive line. I'm very sorry. I can't pronounce the last man's name. Joa X out of Arizona is a football player. And trust me, he's going to be very strong for the Miami Dolphins. And then Kenneth Grant and Jordan Phillips taking both of them D linemen. You're not going to be running on Miami anymore. And watch out from the young man from Texas, Quinn Ewens. Tua has injury problems. If you don't think he's motivated, did y'all see when he got drafted in the 7th round, how he wiped them tears from his eyes? That's a guy that's a very good football player that's played high-level competition at a big-time school in Texas. And again, Emmanuel, stop the madness. Will Campbell. It's the best left tackle coming into this league, brother. And if you didn't see his interview, remember leading up to the draft, the young man came under a lot of criticism. They were talking about his arms too short. Yeah. But when he went 4th overall and they was interviewing him on the NFL Network, the young man was breaking down. You know why he was breaking down? Because he know people were doubting him. Yeah. Don't get it wrong. He played in the best conference. He went up against the best talent. Will Campbell is a hell of a football player, and Mike Vrabel don't make no mistakes on both lines of scrimmage. Then I like Trayvon Henderson, A+ with that one. Think about this with the Patriots. They got Stephon Diggs there signing off season. Now, this Logan, because Logan told me he loves some Kyle Williams out of Washington State. Super playmaker. And I'm going to end it with this. I'm very proud of this young man who's the last pick of the draft. You know where he's from? I know some of his people. Kobe Minor, 901, University of Memphis. Back to you, Hawk.
Hey man, if I mention Pig Suey or anything about the 901, every single show or else we're going to get it. All right. Final thoughts about the division. Obviously, I think every team has proven that they need a little bit of a boost. Buffalo is that much closer, and I think they closed the gap by going defense. All right, Logan, we're going to talk about your Raiders first here as we go to the AFC West. Here's a division where there's only one other division in all of the NFL where 3 of your teams end up winning at least double digits. And Green Bay, Minnesota, and Detroit in the NFC North accomplished that as well. Ashton Jante, let's just put it right there. I think it was a great pick for them, but you got Jack Beck, you got Darian Porter, you got Caleb Rogers. Tell me where the Raiders rank in your mind's eye in terms of a long way that they need to catch up. They only won 4 games. Everybody else won at least 10. Your first perspective here about the division and, more importantly, your specific Raiders.
So, I mean, look, obviously the team had the worst rushing attack in all the NFL by a large sum. So they had that one need, that big need, and they addressed it, obviously. We're going with Ashton Jante. Paid him, I think it was, $32 million already. So he's already paid. He's already got that big money contract, looking great out there in Las Vegas. So I'm hoping that he does well, right? I'm hoping he does well and kind of provides a spark that the team didn't really have last season, at least for offense outside of Brock Bowers. And that was, for the most part, it. As for the rest of the draft, right, we know the Raiders spent a lot of their money in free agency, getting Geno Smith, getting Pete Carroll back from retirement. But in terms of just the draft that they had, I love the Jack Beck pick out of TCU, one of the best stories in the draft, I think. Overall, if you haven't seen it, go out there and check it out. I like Darian Porter, right, out of Iowa State, good player there. The one I was surprised by that I still have to do some research on is Charles Grant, the offensive tackle out of William and Mary. When I saw that, I said, William and Mary. First off, they have a football team out there. The second, I'm like, man, we got this guy in the third round. So I have to do some research on him. I like the J.J. Peggs pick out of Ole Miss, round 6. And also got a nice receiver in Tommy Mellott out of Montana State. And also Cody Lindenberg, late round pick, round 7 out of Minnesota out there with the Golden Gophers. But I think theirs was very kind of top heavy in terms of the quality. They had a lot of picks, but I like the early onset picks of Genty and Beck and Porter. Those are the ones that I really like. And I think Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech is going to do some good work. As you mentioned, Harper, we're the only team that didn't make the playoffs in this division last year. So we got some work to do. We got some work to do overall. And looking at the rest of the West, right? Let's go ahead and go to the Chiefs, right? To a team that, do they need any more firepower? I mean, might as well. They have to every year. They went with Josh Simmons, guys. They went with Josh Simmons. And it just seems like these great picks just keep falling to these guys, right? Them and Buffalo both. They always get, guys that we talk about saying, oh, this is a can't-miss talent, top 15 pick. But somehow they fall all the way, in this case, for Simmons at number 32. Patrick Mahomes, I know, is very happy to get this bruiser out there from Ohio State. But I like the Jalen Royals pick as well. I know I did a video with him and with Brian talking about him out of Utah State. If he's healthy, he can be an absolute speedster out there for KC. So I like that one there. And also the Brashad Smith pick, round 7 out of SMU. Sneaky good selection there for KC. Now, for the Broncos, they went with Jahdae Barron. First pick overall, or first round pick out of Texas, and with RJ Harvey, some other guys there with Q Robinson. I thought that Denver was okay, right? I thought that Barron was a good selection, but I wasn't really in love with the rest of their draft in terms of who they picked. And also, hey, they got a punter, so you got to fill those needs one way or another. And then, of course, we got to go with the kind of the new team on the block, the one that took storm last year in the Chargers. Went Omarion Hampton, North Carolina. Number 22 overall, by way there. I like that one. I also like they paired him up really nicely with Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I thought that he was a damn good player last year for them, and I like the way that they did some good work. But I thought that besides those two, the Kyle Kennard picks from South Carolina, a lot of the other picks I wasn't really sure of at the time. It kind of let me scratch my head for the Chargers, but I thought the Raiders did good, but look, I thought the Chiefs probably won this round. Let's be real here. They got some great minds out there in the front office, and I'm sure a lot of those guys are going to get paid in about 4 or 5 years. So they'll continue the dynasty, right?
Yeah, they've seemed to do a great job, as did New England, of letting that one guy that is going to be a difference maker. They don't have many needs, right? As many Super Bowls as they've attended in the last 5 years. But to get one of the best tackles, it kind of slips back down, and he's not picked at 10, he's not picked at 20, and he falls to them, even though he traded back the last selection of the first round. Emmanuel, your thoughts here. Did anyone really set the pace? Omarion Hampton, many will say that's kind of a surprise for the Chargers. They needed some help, but they went with the bigger guy, the thicker guy. They went with the guy that basically is going to be more of a bruiser than a speedster.
Yeah, Chargers did a kind of halfway decent job in this draft. I like their picks, but I'm like Logan. I'm a couple of these guys are like head scratchers to me. Omarion was the obvious choice for them. Defensive wise, they add a couple of pieces, but defense wasn't their problem. They were kind of on the offensive side looking for ways to make plays. So bringing in the wide receiver, the speedster Trey Harris out of Ole Miss. I mean, I like him. You talking about sure hands, the guy that runs the route tree, he runs pretty good. And he kind of reminds me of himself back in the days, but hey, I'm not going to go down that road. But but he's a good speedster. He's a good look for the Chargers and another offensive weapon. But my pick out of this division would be the Raiders. They obviously really, really like this Ashton Genty guy and is really going to depend on him. Because out of all the positions, the running back position was the only position that they only addressed one time. Every other position on the field, they brought in at least 2 guys out of the draft. Even their undrafted free agents, they got 2 offensive guards, 2 tackles, 2 linebackers. I mean, every position they got at least 2 players. So obviously they're going to rely on Ashton Jeanty to get that rushing game. Like I said, they didn't make the playoffs last year, and they're the only team. They're looking forward to do that this year. As far as the Chiefs, I mean, what can you say, man? When you are at the top of the food chain there, I mean, what more can you add outside of looking forward to the future? And that's what they did when they went through these offensive linemen. The Denver Broncos, another team that's up on the rise. Got the quarterback's name. I'm on the guys.
Bo Nix.
He obviously is the guy that's going to take them somewhere. I mean, that guy, he has my foot in my mouth. He's become that leader. He's got that experience in college. He was there 5 years, so he was ready for the NFL the season before. But he stayed one more year and gained even more knowledge. And the only thing that I could take away from the Denver Broncos is they should have brought in a couple more receivers. I want to see them add more weapons to contend in that division. And because I think they did lose one. But as far as on the defensive side, I mean, they're pretty good they're pretty stacked on defense. They even for the future, they're pretty stacked. But I look forward to seeing them. I want to get some payback from them, but we won't see them for another couple of seasons. Yeah.
Well, defensively, Vincent, the Broncos, that is, they go SEC, then they go Mid-American Conference, Big Ten, SEC in terms of just from a defensive perspective. They go big, strong, fast, Texas, LSU, Alabama, Florida. Now, one of those, obviously, Crawshaw is a punter, but still, nonetheless, the talent level there. They got 2 edge rushers, the ones from LSU and Bama. Broncos had some holes to fill. They're still pretty young. I still think they're playing with house money, but did they make themselves better here? Especially with Jahdae Barron. This is a top 8, top 7 pick on some people's board. For him to fall back to them at 20, I think that was a real gift for them.
I'm going to be honest with the gentleman here today. Can we get a hand clap to Sean Payton? I didn't think he'll go in at this quick and turn the team around based on the fact that what happened between him and Russell Wilson the year before. Hand clap for Bo Nix. I did not see him coming playing football at that level, man. Based on his journey through Auburn, based on his journey through Oregon, and then coming in playing like he did, the Broncos are in a real good shape. I love what they done. Mr. Barron teaming up with the Defensive Player of the Year, Mr. Patrick Surtain. We talking about a tandem back in the old NFC West. Lester Hayes, Mike Haynes. Can we see that coming? Then I like Pat Bryant, the receiver they took out of Illinois. Go look at his film. The gentleman doesn't do anything but catch touchdowns and make tough catches. And Sean Payton needed a running back. I'm going to tell you right now, R.J. Harvey out of Central Florida is that dude. Go back and look at the game film against Colorado. He can play. Now to the Kansas City Chiefs. Impact of losing the Super Bowl. We all know they needed offensive line help. It was so much an impact. Patrick Mahomes has cut his hair going into this year. He was on social media with a new haircut. We all agreed here in the draft panel, including me and this gentleman and the very talented Harper LeBel, if Josh Simmons wouldn't have got hurt in the Oregon game, he clearly was the best offensive tackle in the country and coming into the NFL draft. The only thing with him, if he's healthy, Kansas City is going to be better on the offensive line. I like Omar Norman Lott. Chris Jones, you got help coming, baby. Go look at the Tennessee film. Defensive tackle out of the University of Tennessee. Ashton Gillette, defensive end out of Louisville, he can get pressure. Love what the Chiefs done. Now, Logan, to your Raiders. It's a new sheriff in town, Geno Smith at the quarterback position. I know Mr. Stephen Travers, who's going to be on with us tomorrow. He got to be happy because he loves some Pete Carroll as the head coach in Las Vegas. But Ashton Jeanty has got to be a franchise changer. for the Raiders. He's the difference of them getting better overall as a team. But I say this, he's got a very good Batman in Brock Bowers, who played very well last year at the tight end position. And finally, with the LA Chargers, you got to be happy with the old man, Mr. Harbaugh. He's building that football team into a Super Bowl football team. He's changed Justin Herbert's game where he's not slinging a rock all over the field. Ladd McConkey surprised a lot of people. The wide receiver out of Georgia played very well. Then the Chargers and went out and got Najee Harris, who said he didn't get love in Pittsburgh. But the Chargers drafted Omari Hampton. And there's been comparisons to Eric Dickerson with this young man. Big guy, 6'1", 225. Look at his game film. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can run it. Just ask Drake May 2 years ago how good Mr. Hampton was. Then Trey Harris, we all saw what he can do. Ole Miss, explosive. Ask Jackson Dart how good he is. But the player to me, this is a Jim Harbaugh player. Jamari Caldwell, defensive tackle out of Oregon. Big guy that stuffed the middle. Think about what Harbaugh had in Michigan, Mason Graham and Kendrick Grant. And I want to give War Eagle, this is for you, Mr. Rob Brown. Andre Lambert-Smith is a big-time ball player at the wide receiver position. That division is going to be tough. It's for the Raiders to bring the rear up. Bring the rear up. Vegas. Back to you, Hawk.
Well, that's a recap of the AFC. Let's go on over to the NFC side, and we'll start with the North there. Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, all double-digit winners, just like we had in the AFC West. And then you got the Bears. First pick there with the Bears. They go with their tight end, but not the guy that we were thinking they were going to go with, right, Logan? They ended up going with the Michigan guy. I'm really not going to have a problem with that if he can block. And I think that's one of the things that you got to protect your quarterback, and then you got to protect your quarterback, and then you probably need to protect him a little bit more. That's where I thought they were going to go, but for obvious reasons, let's look at the division. I'll start with you. The Chicago Bears end up with Colston Loveland, number one. He's their tight end. Luther Burden, a wide receiver, and then Ozzie Trapelo. Now, a lot of folks say that Ozzie, I didn't have him on my board that high, but you know what? It didn't matter what I say. A lot of folks are saying this guy can play, and he is game one ready.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, he's a big dude coming out of Boston College. And, like I said, everyone thought going into the draft they might go O-line in round one. But like you said, they kind of got a hybrid with Colston Loveland, right? Because if he can block, then you're essentially getting some help there as you pair him with Cole Kmet, who they signed a couple of years ago to a pretty lofty deal. So they're going to be running some two tight end sets, it appears, out there in Chicago with the brand new look they have, and we'll see how he can do. We'll see how Mr. Trapelo can do protecting Caleb Williams, and also they got a brand new shiny new toy in Luther Burden III, a great receiver from Missouri. Some later picks that I like that they got. I like the Shamar Turner pick from A&M, and also like Zaw Frazier, the 5th round pick out of UTSA. So two guys that I enjoyed. I've seen some good film on. And I thought the Bears did a very solid job overall. Like I said, people can debate all they want about the Loveland and Warren pick, but as long as Loveland has a solid career, and like I say, he's on a great team in Michigan, I think that they'll do just fine. But let's talk about the next team here. Let's go with the Vikings. Right, only had 5 picks overall, but they tried to they did some good work. They got Donovan Jackson at Ohio State. We saw what that team did. Obviously, we know that Minnesota needs some help on the O-line after they kind of had a shakeup. Obviously, Sam Darnold's not there anymore, so they're having to just kind of go and just rebuild, kind of retool, and hope that J.J. McCarthy can get it done with this kind of brand new team, which is kind of crazy for a team that did so well last year in the North. But they got Ingram Dawkins from Georgia, so I like that pick there. But I like the pick of Ty Felton, wide receiver out of Maryland, in the 3rd round. Kind of a sneaky good pick. You didn't hear a whole lot about him, but he's a good wide receiver, solid hands, and I think can do some good work. We'll go with the Detroit Lions up next before we go with the home crowd, right? The team where it was hosted. I think Dan Campbell and Kirby Smart might have had some talks, don't you think, guys? With the way the Lions drafted, for God's sake, they got 3 players out of Georgia. They went with Tate Ratledge, Dan Jackson, and Dominic Lovett. Ratledge being their second round pick, who's hopefully going to do some great work for them in the O-line. He represents, I think, everything that Dan Campbell does as well, just that kind of gritty mentality. Dan Jackson, who, a lot of people have a lot of great words to say, he's a solid player as well. But I think that, looking at the rest of this pick here, they went with their first round selection of Tyleek Williams from Ohio State. They also picked up a receiver out of Calling the Hogs once again, and Isaac Tesla right there. They also got Ahmed Hassanin, edge rusher out of Boise State. I thought the Lions looked really good in this draft. Honestly, since this kind of new regime has taken over for a couple of years, I thought the Lions have looked really good, obviously on the field, but also it all starts here with drafting, starts with free agency. And I thought that, this year was another solid selection with a good crop of guys. Let's go with the hometown team here, the Green Bay Packers, hosted the draft, and they went with their guys for the first time since, 2002. They went with a wide receiver in the first round. The streak ended, and they went with Matthew Golden, a guy who we were saying early on in the draft might have been one of the first receivers picked off the board out of Texas. He ended up going number 23. I thought that was a really good pickup for Green Bay. Jordan Love and him, I think, are going to have hopefully that really good connection there as they kind of still try to figure out who's going to be the guy to step up, right? They've drafted a bunch of receivers in round 2, round 3 who've done some good work, but they're hoping that Golden can kind of be the guy to step up and provide really well for them. Anthony Belton, North Carolina State offensive tackle, just an absolute unit right there. I think he'll slide in really nicely there in Green Bay. But for the rest of their options, like I said, they went with some picks that, I didn't really know a whole lot about these guys, like the Colin Oliver out of OK State, Micah Robinson out of Tulane. Warren Brinson, glad he went, another Georgia guy, went round 6. And they ended it with John Williams, offensive guard in Cincinnati. So I like for this draft, I think that a lot of these teams did really well compared to some of the other divisions. But for me, I got to go with the Lions. I thought that they did a bang-up job. They drafted a lot of guys from surefire programs as well, right? You don't see any names on there, any colleges that you're like, where the heck is this located? You know where those are because those are big Power 5 schools. So I'll go with the Detroit Lions winning it in this division here.
Yeah, Emmanuel, what I think about the Lions, and I said this 100 times, but their offensive line consists of first rounder, third rounder, first rounder. And guess who's had a lot of time to throw? Their quarterback, Jared Goff. And what does that do for you? It puts you in a position to win. So they go with another big offensive lineman, even though he's a second rounder. The good get better, and the better get even better than that. So give us your analysis. Logan gave us a lot to think about there, but I'm going to, with you, start with the Detroit Lions. Give me your perspective.
Lions did a phenomenal job. They get an A+ in this one. Surely Georgia has been Georgia's defense has been the face of Georgia for the last few years. And I mean, why wouldn't you pick from their defense? Detroit Lions has not had a problem scoring. But when you look for the future, you want to keep that quarterback doing what he's doing, keep your offense doing what he's doing, and it starts in the trenches. So they picked up a couple of offensive linemen, but my pick for these guys, man, has been the 3 Georgia players. I mean, these guys, when you add 3 Georgia players and for 2 Georgia players that are on defense, you got to say one of them is going to come out and say, hey, we're going to keep this train rolling. Dan Jackson, I don't know a whole lot about him from Georgia. My guy was Malachi from him, but he's from the Georgia SEC program. He's bound to be kind of halfway decent. Dominic Lovely is going to be the steal for me for Georgia. I mean for Detroit. For him to go 7th round, guys, like I said, the defense was the face of Georgia, but Georgia still had to score, and Dominic Lovely was one of the guys that contributed to that. Green Bay. I love what they did. Went out and got 2 great receivers, both that receivers that I thought should have went higher in the round. Matthew Golden and Savion Williams, both great guys. The speedster Savion, you talking about a guy that's that can get open, run plays, make plays. Should I say after the catch? Savion is that guy. He's that show guy when it comes to once he get that ball in his hand. So for them to love to have two guys like that coming in, I think it's going to work out great for them. As far as Minnesota's to me, man, it's seems like they're taking a step back. They seem like they were all over the place when it came to drafting these players. Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State, that was the obvious choice for them. But they lose their quarterback. A quarterback that I thought was going to be there for a few years, and who I thought they were, sold on. So I think going quarterback, I think they should have brought in another guy to compete for the job. I mean, they addressed the defensive side, but they got to score. I mean, and I think Donald should have he should have stayed there. But now I don't see an identity in Minnesota anymore. Cousins gone, Donald gone. So I mean, where are they? I say Donovan gone. I was looking at Donovan Jackson's name here for Ohio State as that guard coming in. But Donald. I'm like, where's your identity now? I mean, the offense has no identity. They're going to be. I'm going to be looking at these guys and see how they progress.
Yeah, their ability, Minnesota, with just 5 picks, they had to nail it on every one of them. And if JJ gets hurt again, do we know who their backup is? Who's going to be their starting quarterback right now? And Darnold did a fantastic job because he had a great offensive line behind him to give him time. When the blitzes came in the playoffs, that's basically the thing that changed everything for them. So it'll be interesting to see how they take care of that. Vincent, give me your perspective here. We're going to look at no in particular order, but I started with Chicago. You don't have to. I'm just thinking, what pick or picks impressed you most about the NFC North in the division?
Well, there's no question about it. The NFC North is the toughest division in all of football. I'm a bad back with the Minnesota Vikings. Emmanuel, I love you, brother. But Kevin O'Connell can coach, brother. So don't worry about them losing Sam Darnold, because I got a lot of confidence in the young man from Michigan, J.J. McCartney. Remember, he won a national championship. It would have been the starting quarterback if he wouldn't got his knee hurt. And from all indications coming out of the Windy City up there in St. Paul, Kevin O'Connell said, don't worry, because we still got Justin Jefferson. We still got Jordan Addison, and we still got Aaron Jones. And just like the great one, Babyface Nelson, Mr. Logan Landers, y'all didn't listen to him. Tay Felton can play out of Maryland. And I love the pick in Donovan Jackson, who a lot of people saying is the best guard in the draft. Oh, by the way, he did get a national championship with the University of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So Minnesota is going to be competitive. Not the Chicago Bears. I got to agree with my man from Notre Dame High School by way of the Colorado State, Mr. Harper LeBel. I thought the Bears should have took Tyler Warren. I thought that would be a perfect fit. The only thing with Mr. Loveland is his blocking abilities. Mm-hmm. But you got to understand, Ben Johnson, that was his player that he wanted. So that was a personal pick. Love to pick with Luther Burton, the third out of Missouri. Probably the best slot receiver in the draft, and he makes a lot of yards after the catch. Shamar Turner is going to be a very good player for Chicago at the D tackle position. He's going to be paired up with a guy who we already know is pretty good in Grady Jarrett. So I like what the Bears done. And by the way, I want y'all to remember this name. I can't pronounce his last name. I'm going to call him Kyle M., the running back out of Rutgers. He's the guy that's going to play a lot of football for Chicago. Go look at his film on YouTube, him blocking in the pocket, being a pass blocker. The Bears are going to be all right. Not a Green Bay. Matt LaFleur, all you got to do is get over the hump. For me, it's all about Jordan Love playing the quarterback position. Remember, he took a step back and they slid it a little bit. But I like what they got in Matthew Golden. Speedster. Go look at the game against Arizona State in the college football playoffs. I like Anthony Belton, the offensive tackle out of North Carolina State by way of Tallahassee, Florida. And like you said, Mr. Emmanuel, Savon Williams should have been a first-round pick. I had a first-round grade on him. Man, he is very serious after the catch. Big guy, about 6'4", 225. He can get it. And then finally, man, you got to love Dan Campbell. You got to love Dan Campbell. He's turned that thing up there, Motor City around. Yeah. Remember when he first took the job in his first press conference? He said, "My gonna bite some kneecaps off." And I remember some people here in Atlanta calling him an idiot by the initials of BB. You ain't calling him no idiot no more. Bite the kneecaps off. Got some common sense, because as Mr. Harper LeBel keep telling y'all, he's building on the offensive line. And what does he do? I like what he did taking the young man Williams out of Ohio State. And I like all the other picks. Dan Jackson out of Georgia, Dominic Lovett out of Georgia. But I'm going to tell you, him taking Tate Ratledge, if that young man stays healthy, the line's offensive line is going to be real strong and going to be more high level. Take Ratledge. If healthy, it's going to be a Pro Bowl player at the guard position. He's going to play 7 to 8 years in the league, and he's a Dan Campbell type of guy. That's a tough division, man, the NFC North. It's no question about it. It's just like the great band out of Dayton, Ohio, Lakeside, lead singer Mark Wood. It's all the way live in the NFC North. Back to you, Harper.
Well, the Detroit Lions were the highest scoring team in the league last year. They got 564 points. They got 2 more linemen, big guys, to help them out. But defense was the issue last year. Remember, they were bringing guys in out of the Foot Locker. If you worked at the restaurant down the street, they didn't care. If you could tie your shoelaces, they were going to sign you and give you a chance to play. Let's go to the NFC East now, where we just spoke about one of the best offensive teams. Now we're looking at the dead last worst with the New York Giants in the lower left-hand corner. They only scored 273 points. They addressed their pass rush with Abdul Carter, and then they sneak around and they get Jackson Dart. They move around, they trade for him, and I think they had a lot of holes to fill, but they made an impact. Right, Emmanuel, we'll start with you here in the NFC East. Tell me that I'm wrong. You can, but in a division where it seemed like the separation is getting even worse, they have to catch up now to the Commanders, who were picking 5th last year, and now they pick up in the late 20s because of the things that they were able to do offensively. Get the right quarterback, get a good new coach, change things around in Washington. But New York with Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Darius Alexander, and then Cam Scatabo in the 4th round. I thought that was an interesting pick for them there. But offensively, they're going to be a little bit better, right?
I agree. However, Washington is going to keep running this thing away. I'm saying not Washington, Philly, unless Washington can shore up that defense. They don't have a problem scoring. You're talking about a team that was averaging close to 30 points a game. So that's not a problem for them. Their problem is keeping people out of the end zone, getting people off the field on 3rd downs. But they won't catch up to the Eagles until they shore up that defense. New York, I tell you, man, my personal opinion of them, they got to, they placed all the blame on one person, Daniel Jones. And I mean, you can't place blame when your whole team looks the way it does. New York is one of those teams. Yes, they did address a lot in the draft. And they went out and got a whole bunch of undrafted free agents, but they're grasping at straws right now. They got the best player in the draft, I think, Abdul Carter at Penn State. He's going to help shore up that defense. Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. I mean, like I said, they're grasping at straws. They're looking for that quarterback. And Darius Alexander, DT out of Toledo. Like I said, the defense, I mean, they got to play. They got to establish an identity. They don't have one now. I don't know how many of these players are going to actually come in and actually produce year one. I think it's going to be a couple of years for New York. Dallas is going further back in the division. I don't know how much further you can get back to last place. But they're going further back. The only teams that these two teams, New York and Dallas, are competitive against is Philly and Washington. Everybody else kind of do what they want against these two teams. But these two teams, they don't fall down for nobody except for other teams in the playoff. I mean, in the league. But Washington is going to come back. I think Washington is going to come in and give Philly more than they can handle. Philly lost one of a very key player, Najee Harris. I think he was was a vital part of New Philly, and I think it's going to come back to bite them. I really do. I know they addressed that wide receiver spot, but at the same time, I think Najee was that type of player that had that go get it, make a play happen, energetic type guy, and I think I'm not going to say they needed to keep him, but they should have kept him. That's my point on that.
Oh, Harper appears you're muted.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, you're muted, Harper.
Hold on, Harper. Mike's muted, buddy. Hold on.
I'm sorry. I know my sound was reverberating and I was creating an echo. I was saying, Emmanuel, thank you for that. Logan, I'm going to go with you next because if you say anything bad about the Cowboys, Vincent's going to correct you very quickly, just like he's going to with Emmanuel. He's going to remember it forever, and he's going to comment on it in about 2 minutes. But give us your perspective, Logan.
So I thought with the East, and you mentioned them, so I'll start with the Cowboys. I like the Tyler Booker pick out of Alabama. Solid selection there. And now this is, as Brian mentioned during our draft show, the third Tyler on the O-line for the Cowboys. So they're building up a unit right there in Dallas. I like that selection. I thought that if you get anyone from Alabama, right, don't matter who he is, he's probably going to produce, especially the O-line. They produce some studs out there. So I like that selection there. I like the Donovan Uzurike, the Boston College edge rusher. Really good selection there. I enjoyed watching him play, doing some work on him. Jadon Blue, the running back out of Texas, if he can stay healthy. He kind of didn't play a whole lot towards the end of last year for one reason or not, but when he was on the field, I thought he did some solid work for them. And then I like the late-round pick as well. Another good running back because we know Dallas struggled with the running game last year, and that's going to be out of Clemson with Phil Maffa, a guy who caused some fits with Clemson and the Tigers last year. So I like the Cowboys. I thought they did a solid job in the draft this year. I'll go with Washington. I wasn't blown away with Washington's selections this year. They didn't have a lot of draft capital, right? They didn't have a whole lot of players they could go with, and they had 5 picks overall. They went with Josh Connerly Jr., Oregon offensive tackle. Like I said, you got to keep your guys up. You got to keep holes in the running game. So we'll see how he can produce out there. But I like the Trey Amos pick from Mississippi, cornerback there. And we'll see how the rest of their crew does with Jalen Lane out of Virginia Tech, Kane Madrano from UCLA, and their 7th-round selection in Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So we'll see how those guys can produce. But I wasn't really blown away by Washington. It might just be because of sheer numbers alone. We'll go now with the champs. We'll go with the Eagles and what they did in this year's draft. And obviously they traded with the Chiefs in their selection. They just kind of swapped one back, one forward, one back. They also went with Alabama. They went with Jahad Campbell, linebacker. Does this team need any more? I get they lost a lot of guys in the offseason, but, man, it just feels like that's just a right pick, right? A solid player here in Campbell. I think he's going to excel out there in Philadelphia. So they're building like an SEC powerhouse unit in the linebacking defensive core. It feels like they're just adding more and more to it every year. I like the Ty Robinson pick out of Nebraska as well. That dude is just chiseled like a Greek god, and he is just a nasty player. I think he's going to fit in perfectly there. They went with Georgia once again. Small Munden, Georgia linebacker there. I also like the Kyle McCord pick that they got. A good kind of a backup in case anything does happen to Jalen Hurts. So I think that's a capable backup, someone in McCord, who, as we know, played for Ohio State for a little bit, then finished out his career at Syracuse, did some good work there. I like the Miles Hinton pick they got in round 6 as well. I thought that the Eagles did a very solid job in this year's draft. And then we're going to go with the Giants, right? The Giants, like you said, they need some work. And I thought that they did a very good job. I think them and the Eagles are my top 2 for this year for the East, because I like that they needed their quarterback. They think that Jackson Dart is the answer. Time is going to tell if he is or not, but obviously they think that just based off of what they've seen and, obviously the interviews and whatnot, that he is their guy. But let's not forget number 3 overall pick, Abdul Carter. And, man, if he can produce like he's supposed to, and if Kayvon Thibodeau, remember a guy who they drafted out of Oregon a handful of years ago, if he can, finally break through that mold and become the player they expect him to be, as well as the rest of that, really, because they have a very solid just line. They have a really scary front seven on their defense. So I think this is definitely going to be a team of the Giants, and we all mentioned it, that they're going to be knocking in your teeth, push you down, hard-nosed defense first, and then offense maybe second. But, I mean, Emmanuel, you mentioned the Darius Alexander pick out of Toledo. I mean, looking at him, you was like, that's Toledo. What's this guy doing here? He's a ball player. He is a good ball player out there with the Rockets. So I thought that the Cam Scatterboot pick, they got Arizona State. We saw he got knocked out in in their playoff game. He said, I'm not leaving. I'm coming back. And they almost won. They almost beat Texas in that ball game. So they're getting a dog there. But I think for me, I thought the two, just based off of the player value that I seen, I thought that the Eagles and I thought the Giants were the top two picks for the teams. And Vincent, I know the Cowboys weren't in there. I want to stay here. I want to keep doing videos. So I just want to plead my case here before I turn the mic over back to Harper.
One interesting comment there that I read regarding Abdul Carter is he got a hold of Lawrence Taylor and asked him if he could wear his number.
Oh,
and
wow.
Lawrence declined.
Whoa.
And the initial reason for him declining would have been enough for anyone to think, oh my gosh, this guy's dissing me. Lawrence Taylor commented by saying this, Abdul, I want you to be your own player. Get your own number. Do something great and identify yourself, not with my number, my former number. I'd gladly give it to you, but I'm not going to. And I want you to be your own guy. So when I read that, I go, that's a very interesting response. And Abdul Carter said, cool, I appreciate it. Instead of him going, that guy's an idiot, he respected the decision. I know it could have been very easy for LT to go, you know what, you go ahead, use my number, but he didn't. So a very interesting dynamic, but we'll see how that turns out in the days to come. Does he wear 53? Does he wear 59? Does he go with a different number? Like Bosworth wanted 44. He ended up getting 55. So we'll figure that out later. But before we go any further, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Let me say this. I got thick skin, so it's no problem. Emmanuel and Logan, y'all are correct. Dallas is the worst team in the NFC East, so I don't have no problem with that. Start there. I'm representing Cowboy Nation, and if any Cowboy fans out there, we are realistic. Even though every season we come into, we always say we're America's team, and that's that small thinking that we're going to go to the Super Bowl. Start with the Cowboys draft. I call it the common sense draft. I like to pick in Tyler Booker. We needed help on the offensive line. Zach Martin retired in all season. Tyron Smith is not walking through them doors no more. That's where we needed help. Donovan E. out of Boston College is a very good, productive football player. Maybe he could give Michael Parsons some help on the D-line as far as rushing the passer. Shavon Reveille. If he wouldn't have tore his knee up in the second game with East Carolina, he would have been a first-round pick. The only thing with him is he going to be healthy. He will contribute if he's healthy. But the biggest draft pick in this draft is Jadon Blue, the running back out of Texas, because we don't have nobody that is star level and that can produce offensively on the ground. So as far as the Cowboys draft, I give us a B, simply because we used common sense and we didn't read and do anything crazy. We drafted real safe, and Tyler Booker is going to be a good pick for us, a player that's going to play at least 6-7 years in the National Football League. To the New York Giants, I have to say I was very impressed with their draft, simply because you get the best pass rusher rushing the passes, I think, since Derrick Thomas coming out of Alabama into the league. Explosive first step. If anyone want to know how good Mr. Carter is, go back to the college football playoff game against Notre Dame. He was playing with one shoulder, separated shoulder. And look how he played that night. Go back and watch on YouTube and look at the game. Jackson Dart. I saw something this past week when Eli Manning sent him a very personal message through social media and gave him some encouraging words. Say, I want you to represent the Giants because you came out of the University of Mississippi. I went to New York and won 2 Super Bowls on Broadway. I think that young man, even though everything went to Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, look what he done at Ole Miss. He was a highly recruited at USC, transferred out. Lane Kiffin brought him down to Oxford. Even brought some competition in there against him. But his 2 years there, he didn't flinch. And he had Ole Miss in the college football playoff conversation. If Ole Miss doesn't lose to Florida, they playing in the college playoffs. And go back to the Georgia game last season. He didn't put up a lot of yards, but he made some throws in that game. And you think about they got Cam Scatterbo. Now, remember what Mr. Scatterbo said before the playoff game against Texas? The young man out there from Northern California by way of Sacramento. I'm the best running back in the country. I think he didn't disappoint, did he, gentlemen?
Didn't disappoint.
He going on Broadway. You getting a real strong-nosed football player that's going to come and bring his lunch pail. And then you talk about the Giants D-line with Mr. Carter, Dexter Lawrence, who's the best D tackle in the game, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. Then there's, as Mr. Logan Landers said, there's Alexander's a football player. The Giants might be that team that make a jump. If Jackson Dart can mature at the quarterback position, they go with him from day one. And remember this, they do got that rookie receiver last year that came out of LSU. What's his name? Malik Neighbors that had almost, over 100 yards receiving, and I think went over some 1,000 yards. I don't have my stat in front of me. This is a team that can make a quicker scene if everything else works out in their favor. Then with the Washington Commanders, even though they didn't have many picks, but look what they done in the offseason. Deebo Samuel and Larry Tunstall. Then they take Josh Conley, who had a first-round grade out of Oregon, and Mr. Conley went up against, I think, Mr. Derek Harmon, who's a first-round pick of Pittsburgh. Then they get Trey Amos, maybe the best corner in the country, and we all know how Mr. Jaden Daniels done. Washington is going to be all right. And then, of course, to the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman, I want to give you your flowers. I don't know how you do it with the Eagles drafting with the last pick in the draft. And the roster you and building the talented players. I had a high grade on Jadar Campbell. I thought he would at least go 18 or 19 to Tampa Bay. That's how much I really, really liked him as a football player. Go back and look what he did, Mr. Campbell, against LSU that night. 8 tackles, 2 sacks, interception. He was the best player on the field. Then you get Ty Robinson out of Nebraska, a 6-year player, hard nose, don't do a lot of talking. Go back and look how he played against Colorado and Shedeur Sanders in the opening game. I think he was a monster. Then you get Sal Munson out of Georgia, by way of Dallas, Georgia, that's right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Eagles, they're going to have to be the favorites going into next season. And in my opinion, they're the best team right now in all of pro football. Howie Roseman, my hat's off to you as a GM. You keep getting better and better. And drafting it with the last pick, and you pick up a player like Mr. Campbell out of Alabama, that's special. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
You're muted.
Oh, hey, Harper. Microphone.
My fault. I did it. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. I will. We got the echo. All right, Vincent, we're going to stick with you. We're going to talk about the NFC West again. We're going to talk about the Niners, Cardinals, the Rams, and in my opinion, one of the best drafts of any team when you talk about ready to play. Seattle Seahawks. But let's give your impression first and foremost. I was surprised that the Niners fell as far as they did. They were 6-11 overall. They had a scoring differential of minus 47. They lose their last 4 games. Let's talk first and foremost about San Francisco. What did they need to do to get better, and how did they address it?
D-line. They had a lot of problems at the line of scrimmage, stopping the run. They went out and got Mikael Williams, D lineman out of Georgia. Then they came back and got Alfred Collins. And if you know anything about San Francisco with Robert Saleh, it's not a defensive coordinator. Formerly was there. He likes guys on the defensive line that are quick. And I think the 49ers really made a big move there. But the question with the 49ers I ask is that how much is the bag going to be for Brock Purdy? Because remember, they lost a lot of players because they couldn't pay him. So to me, that's the biggest question. But San Francisco is still a solid football team in the West. You mentioned the Seattle Seahawks. I'm glad you mentioned that draft, Hart. I think they had the best draft in a lot of people because they drafted for needs, and they got, I think, one of the best linemen, Gray Zabel. This is a guy that started at 5 different positions at North Dakota State. Then they got the safety out of South Carolina, Nicky E., and then Jalen Merrill. I'm not saying Jalen Merrill is going to go in there and beat out Sam Darnold, but you can use him in packages. You can put pressure on defense. And the most important part, remember Damian Martinez, running back out of Miami. Got overshadowed a little bit by Cam Ward being but remember him 2 years ago at Oregon State. Then when you look at the LA Rams, this is another team that you look at the Rams over the years, they don't even have draft picks. Then when they get draft picks, they trade. But the young man, they GM out of the University of Harper, War Eagle, Les Snead, who got his bones in his experience through going through the Atlanta Falcons organization. They tend to always get it right, man. Terrence Ferguson is a very good football player, tight end out of Oregon. And Jaquez Hunter, running back out of Auburn, he's going to help Matthew Stafford. And then finally, the Arizona Cardinals. To me, what Arizona is all about, the maturity of Kyler Murray. Because right now, this is a guy that got to really, really step it up. And he hasn't really been healthy. Because the young coach out there, Jonathan Gadam, is a very good football coach. But you got to love their draft, man. Walter Nolan, defensive tackle at Ole Miss. He's going to be paired with Darius Robinson. Let me give Walter Nolan some kudos here today. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but I don't care. The 901, Memphis, Tennessee in the house. Yes, he was born there. Jordan Birch is a hell of a football player out of Oregon. Very, very good. Will Johnson should have went first round, but there was questions with his knees. But think about 2 years ago, the game film against Marvin Harrison. This is the vision. I think every team had a very good draft, and they drafted for needs. Back to you, Hart.
I think they did. They surprised everyone by going defense the way they did. Their only offensive pick was a guard, but a big one at that from Texas. Logan, give me your thoughts here on the division. Does anybody stand out in your opinion? Like I said a moment ago, I don't want to repeat myself, but I thought San Francisco had a lot of needs that they needed to address, but they haven't had to in the past years. 11 picks, though.
Yeah, that's 11 picks, and I feel like it came at the right time, right? A year in which they struggled mightily when a lot of people didn't expect them to do as poorly as they did in the 2024 season. So this actually worked out really nicely for them in hindsight. You got Mikael Williams, who hopefully can translate well in San Francisco, can get to the quarterback and do basically what he did at Georgia. You're shoring up your D-line as well with Alfred Collins, just a big body out there, your defensive tackle spot. Like I said, Nick Martin, a good player out there, OK State. Like the CJ West pick out of Indiana. Remember that team, how well they did on both sides of the ball and how surprising they were. Vincent, you mentioned Jordan James out of Oregon. They got him in the 5th round. That's a steal. He did some good work for the Ducks this past year. So I liked what San Francisco did. They got Curtis Rourke as well, the Minuteman out there in Indiana, who everyone loved for the whole season. So I think that quality-wise and also quantity, that San Francisco did a solid job. Let's go over to the Seahawks here. The Seahawks, they were the team that drafted, of course, the it feels like every year now, the one guy from North Dakota State. Right? There's always one, whether it's a quarterback or a wide receiver or an offensive lineman, whatever it may be. That's what they went up going with there. And Greg Zabel. I like the Nick Emmanuel pick from South Carolina. Elijah Aroro from Miami did some good work. Like you mentioned, Jalen Milroe, interesting player. we'll see how he does, and if one day he'll maybe slide into a starting role for the Seahawks when it's all said and done. You never know. And also, Harp, you got to represent your alma mater, Colorado State. Got Torrey Horton out there in the 5th round, so see how he does. But I thought what Seattle did and what I really liked, they're maybe still Vincent, you mentioned Danny Martinez, but I like the Ricky White pick from UNLV at their final selection in round 7. I think that if he can produce like he did for the Rebels, that he can have a solid career and get some good work just based off his speed alone. He's got that great 4.5, 4.4 speed that you want out there.
Yes, sir. Ricky White, Marietta, Georgia. Marietta High School by way of Michigan State. I'm sorry.
That's it. Hey, you're 100% right on that one. Over to the Rams, right? Another team that selected a lot of from well-known schools, right, who produce a ton of talent, right? They got teams from like Auburn with Jarquez Hunter, Ferguson, their first selection in round 2, Josiah Stewart, Michigan. I thought that they did some good work there, right? They had some good positions they needed to fill, and I thought the Rams, overall did a really good job. And I think that when you look at just the West, right, the 49ers, I thought that they had a ton of great talent there. The Seahawks, they also I thought did a really good job. The Cardinals, right, with Walter Nolan, with all the tremendous talent they got there, that's just a super young team. It's more so maybe not if, but when, because they're all so young. I mean, they've been drafted a ton of really good guys who are all 25, 26 and under. And let's just see how long it'll take before they can finally develop there. But I like the Walter Nolan pick. I thought he did good work for the Rebels. The Will Johnson pick, as you mentioned, Vince, is someone who some people had in the first round had it not been for those issues with his knees. If he's healthy, they got themselves a steal out there in pick number 47. And also Denzel Burke, round 5 at Ohio State. I mean, he's got some good game film too. So I thought just as a division overall, I think the NFC West might be one of the better ones in terms of all the talent drafted here.
Emmanuel, your perspective.
Yeah, I like what the Rams have done. You talk about a young team that they're one team that did address for needs. When you talk about going and getting players, and it wasn't just the Rams, all the teams in this division went to get teams. When you say SEC, they went to get players that they know that could come in and possibly come in and start day one. Ole Miss was another one of the teams that was consensus through all 4 teams, where they grabbed players from these teams. So each one of these teams here, they're outside of the Arizona Cardinals, they had a lot of holes that they had to fill and go and grab players that can come in and possibly start day one. Seattle with Nick Emmanuel, he's possible a day one pick out of South Carolina for Seattle. Robbie Ortiz, I can't pronounce his last name, don't give me that, but he's from Alabama, the tight end. You're talking about bringing in another offensive weapon for them. Another tight end, Elijah, I ain't gonna say the alma mater, my college team, Elijah, the tight end, Gray Zabel, the North Carolina offensive lineman. You're talking about, like I said, guys that can come in and start day one, and that's what each one of these teams did in division. Because none of these teams actually had like a bad season last year. Arizona, they speak for themselves. I'm not gonna speak on them, but it's not much farther they can go unless they bring in these players that can actually come in and produce day one. San Francisco, presumably it looks like on the outside looking in like they got a whole bunch of problems, but the one consensus thing that they had is finding an identity. Michael Williams on defense, like you said, they lost a lot of players. They got to bring in players that can come in, fill day one. Michael, Alfred, you talking about 2 players that can come in and play side by side. Nick Martin, linebacker out of Oklahoma State, cornerback Upton Stock. I mean, you talking about guys that can come in and outright just change the defense. These guys are playmakers. I love that Bill Michael Williams. I actually wanted him here in Atlanta. Preferred him here in Atlanta, but we didn't get him. San Francisco got him. But you can see the consensus was defense, and it seems like all of these defenses we had the idea of going defense.
Yeah, they got to be able to stop each other in one way, shape, or form. Let's go out to save the best for last. Emmanuel, we'll start with you. Tampa, in my opinion, kind of nailed it. Ibuka from Ohio State, Benjamin Morrison, from Notre Dame, Jacob Parrish. We've talked about him, Vincent. Also, Tez Johnson. We talked about him earlier. Just some sneaky guys, in my opinion, that are going to make that team a little bit better. We do have to talk about the Houdats. Unfortunately, we'll talk a little bit about them, and then obviously with Carolina improving and getting better, and then we'll let's just do the 3 teams, and then we'll pick on the Falcons there at the very end. But give us your 3-team impression here in the NFC South, Emmanuel.
All right. Well, going in, Tampa Bay needed edge rusher, cornerback, linebacker, wide receiver for the future. So, and they drafted each one of these into the going into this draft. I like for Atlanta, I like Emeka Ibaku for Atlanta, the wide receiver. I don't know if he's from Atlanta. For Tampa Bay, they needed a wide receiver for the future, and they got him. Mike Evans is not going to be there forever. Injury prone.
Wait. Hall of Famer Mike Evans. He's the only guy that is supposed to be in the Hall of Fame right now. If you listen to each and every Tampa broadcast, you can't mention his name without throwing Hall of Fame. So how dare you even consider that?
Well, he's a nemesis here in the NFC South. So I can't put Hall of Famer on his name. So I get the pass on that one, I think.
All right.
Anybody else have to put Hall of Famer Mike Evans? I'm not going to give him that. I'm an enemy. So yeah, but I still like what they did in the draft. I mean, they addressed defense. They love that linebacker position, drafting the linebacker position. Even from back when Devin White was here. So they love the fact that they're able to play from that linebacker position and linebacker position being the identity of their defense. So they did a pretty good. They had a pretty good draft. Sad to say. And they addressed that need for the future in Emeka. But I think Emeka is actually going to come in and be actually a contender in there. Because I mean, what's his name? What's your injury-prone receiver?
Chris Godwin.
Godwin, yeah. So he's going to probably actually be able to get a couple of plays behind him. And I see him coming in and actually probably even contending, probably even taking a position, to be honest with you. Godwin is a heck of a receiver. But if you can't stay on the field, if you can't produce, guys, I mean, you got to have a backup in there that can come in and play. The Saints, that even tasted funny. But and shout out to Keep It Real Sports. I mean, he's in the chat and he's keeping me busy here on in the chat. So and I appreciate him joining in. But the Saints actually had a pretty decent draft. They didn't address every position, and they couldn't have because they didn't have the enough picks to do so. But they did go in and get and the thing is about this NFC South. The draft didn't really start for the NFC South until after the 3rd round. Everybody knew what was going to happen in the 1st and 2nd round, but when you got into after the 3rd round, we started getting players that presumably was first round draft grades. And that's presumably for the NFC South. That's where the draft actually started. So for the Saints to go in and get a guy like Calvin Banks, get Tyler Shaw, Vernon Broughton, Jonas Sanker, these guys were presumably going to be at the Saints. When you start going down into the draft, like I said, Jonas Sanker from out of Virginia, Dana Stoutsman from Oklahoma, these guys are playmakers. They're not superstars by no means, but these guys are going to come in and be hungry and actually be able to produce possibly day one, because the Saints have, like us, got a lot of holes. Everyone in the division pretty much have a lot of holes to address. So those guys, I think, are going to come in, produce day one, and actually be a contributor. As for the who I'm missing, Carolina Panthers, another bad taste. They actually did a phenomenal job in the draft addressing defense. They got their number 1 receiver, and I'm gonna call him T-Mac. But his first name is one to work with. Nick Scotton on defense. That's gonna be a beast in itself. This other guy, Princely. I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name, guys. That name there is one to work with. But the offensive line.
Go ahead, say that 3 times and do it quickly.
Exactly. But the outside linebacker out of Ole Miss, guys, this guy has a motor on him. I mean, this guy here, you talking about a guy that can come in actually put his hands in the dirt as well. So he playing in that box. He could play anywhere on that box, and not in the middle, but anywhere in that box, edge, any linebacker position, outside linebacker, middle position. He's that guy that can play that guy. Trevor, the running back for Carolina, I thought Cam Scatterbo was going to end up in Carolina. Thank goodness he didn't. But Trevor is going to be a headache in itself, so he's going to be a plus side for the Carolina Panthers. Now, as for us, the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, let's save that for later. Let's save that. Okay, we'll do the 3, and then we'll talk about the Falcons if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah.
The Trevor Etienne, because Chuba Hubbard, gosh, he's done so well. I think he's the best player on the board, in my opinion. And we can't let him slip by. And then Cam Jackson out of Florida, dude, 6'6", 330, whatever. Oh my gosh, what a motor! So they got bigger and better all around. But let's Logan, let's go with you. We'll do the 3 teams, non-Falcon, and then we'll just have a little Falcon finish here to wrap up the show.
All right, so we'll start out there in Carolina. I thought Carolina overall did a really good job. We know that towards the end of the season, they started to kind of piece things together, right? Bryce Young started playing a lot better. You mentioned Chuba Hubbard, who's been a nice surprise over the last couple of years. They've got some good talent. They just locked up J.C. Horn for their lockdown corner for many years to come. So Carolina, I kind of equate them to kind of Arizona in a way. If they have a lot of super young talent, it just depends on how fast they can progress and if they can kind of piece it all together. So I like the Tedero McMillan pick in the first round. Like you mentioned, you've got a A+ receiver, hopefully, out of Arizona. So if he can work out there with Bryce Young, I think that's going to be a solid combo. The Nick Scourton pick out of Texas A&M, a really good pick there. I think that if he can develop like we saw, like he did for the Aggies, like he's going to do for the Panthers, just not against the Falcons, then he could do some good work there. Cam Jackson in round 5 out of Florida State, just an absolute, you can't miss this guy. I mean, he is just an absolute huge guy. And, Trevor Etienne going to Carolina. We'll see how Trevor can do some good work there. Head on up to Tampa Bay out there in Florida. I thought the Emeka Egbuka pick was solid because let's not forget, before all the rah-rah and everything happened with, Marvin Harrison Jr. and everything last year with Ohio State. I mean, for a minute there, everyone was looking at Emeka as, that number 1 receiver, for Ohio State and how well he did. I mean, he's sure-handed, right? And that's what you want from wide receiver. So I think Tampa did a great job there. Benjamin Morrison, a guy who out of Notre Dame. Vince, I know you're going to sing praises on whenever we get to you because he's just a tremendous ball player for Notre Dame. We'll see if he can, like I said, stay healthy, do some good work. I like the Jacob Parrish pick as well, Kansas State. David Walker, Central Arkansas. We covered him here on the show. A really good player. Like I said, one of those guys from a smaller school, but one of those who was kind of larger than life in terms of his play and how well he produced. And I thought that they did a really good job. Like I said, Elijah Roberts at SMU, good pick there. But I like the Tez Johnson pick, round 7. Out of Oregon. I thought that was a very good selection to kind of end the draft. We'll see how he does on the draft on the board and how well he'll go. But I think that if all is said and done, that he can also be another option to produce. And now let's go to the Saints. We gotta go to the Saints here. They went Kelvin Banks, Jr., offensive tackle out of Texas. Got to protect your quarterback. We said, well, who the heck's going to be the quarterback this year? Derek Carr. He's in a sling. Oh, who can it be? Is it going to be Spencer Rattler or is it going to be Tyler Shugg? Louisville. Didn't see that one coming. I can tell you that much. Whenever his name got called, I said, wait a minute. Okay. All right. But they obviously they saw something in him. They drafted him in round 2. And we'll see how that quarterback battle goes. But, the Danny Stutzman pick, I like him out of Oklahoma. Devin Neal from Kansas. I think that was a really good selection late round 6 for the Saints. But of the 3 teams here, I thought that Tampa Bay did well. And I thought Carolina. We'll see, like I said, a bunch of young guys, but we'll see who can kind of, rise to the top of that one. For the Saints, still wasn't super in love with these picks. Like I said, offensive tackle, offensive lineman, you don't have really any stats for these guys. They're not, the sexy picks with all the great stats and highlights. But I think Kelvin Banks, like I said, he's a hell of a ball player out of Texas. And And like I said, the Saints were in just cap room hell for many, many seasons. So they're just trying to find something that can stick in the draft. But that's my take on the rest of the NFC South before we get to our hometown team.
Yeah, let's do it. Finish with you, Vincent. Let's go over your insight regarding the 3 of the 4 teams here in the NFC South.
The NFC South, how we end the show today. I got to agree with Mr. Harper LeBel on this one, man. Tampa Bay knocked it out. A+. I don't think it's no team had a better draft. And then you got one of the hottest quarterbacks in the game, Baker Mayfield. I'm going to start with the wide receiver. Mr. Emmanuel, I know you probably don't like Mike Evans, and I understand that the rival, but please put respect on that man's name. How many straight 1,000-yard seasons Mr. Mike Evans has? 11 to 12, correct?
Yeah, something like
it's
that.
No question. He's going to be a sure first Hall of Fame ballot. You think about that wide receiver room. Jalen McMullen out of Washington played well for him last year. If Chris Godwin can stay healthy, then y'all forgot about Sterling Shepard. Yeah. Now you put Mr. Emeka E with that. Tampa Bay solid. Ben Morrison, you right, Logan. I've been high on this young man. Went out last year, was out for the season with a hip injury at Notre Dame. Tell you how good. If he wouldn't have got hurt this year, he would have been the number 1 corner taken. Yeah. It's no question about it. Reason I say that, go back in 2023 and see his game film against Marvin Harrison Jr. And everyone to understand where I'm coming from. Jacob Parrish, my colleague, the face of 100 Yards Football, our lead host, Harper LeBel. We talked about him, how good he was. Can play everything on the outside and the slot, 4-3-5 guy. Then you come back with one of the most productive players in the FCS level, David Walker at Central Arkansas, Pig Sooie. Although he didn't go to Arkansas, I got to give respect. Crazy numbers. I don't know his sack numbers, but he's a football player that should have went higher in the draft. Elijah Roberts, very, very underrated football player across the country. Look at his game film at SMU. Should have been a 3rd rounder. And then you get Taz Johnson, wide receiver out of Oregon. Grew up in the household with Bo Nix. With all that speed, I think Tampa is going to be very serious in the NFC South. Very dangerous. The Carolina. Like what Dan Morgan done, the GM, former linebacker out of the University of Miami. They got Bryce Young some help. T. McMillan, Arizona. I was really torn on him. But when he had his pro day and busted that 4.4 at 6'4", 230 pounds, the mic has dropped. I have no problems with him. Then they got 2 very talented pass rushers out of the SEC. They got a very talented running back, Trevor Etienne out of Georgia. But a lot of people, we ain't mentioned Lanton Ransom, the safety out of Ohio State. And then we talking about Cam Jackson, good pick, but I like Mitchell Evans, the tight end out of Notre Dame. Carolina, strong draft. Now to the New Orleans Saints. I know the rivalry down here is strong between the Falcons and Saints. Kellen Moore is a new head coach coming into a situation, but that's still a New Orleans Saints team that's got some talent. I like Kevin Banks, even though I thought they should have took a quarterback at that pick with Shedeur Sanders, but I understand why they went with Kevin Banks. Rated as the number 2 tackle coming into the draft. And has played a lot of football. And what I like about the young man, I like his story. His mother passed when he was a sophomore at Texas. That's telling me this young man has got a lot of what I say warrior inside of him. Then you look at in New Orleans, Verdon Broughton, very good football player, the D tackle position. Quincy Riley, the corner out of Louisville, is going to turn heads down in the Superdome. Should have been a high pick. As Mr. Landers said, Neal, very good running back out of Kansas. Back to you, Mr. Harper LeBel.
Well, it seems like everyone in the division did something to improve. Emmanuel, do you want to go first or do you want to go last to talk about here?
You're going to save the best for last.
You want to save the best for last. All right. Well, Vincent, we'll begin with you then. Let's go local, live and local. We're going to have it, dependable, determined, all that. It did surprise me. I thought the Falcons, with only 5 picks, would end up trading back to get another one, and they trade up. They traded up, and they gave up next year's number 1. Boy, I hope this works out. But James Pierce has to be a difference maker, right? We're going to talk first about him, and then we're just going to look at the individual picks that the Falcons made. They're on the clock.
I don't want to make a lot of people uncomfortable today, but I always got to tell it like it is, and I tell it from my heart. I'm going to start with this. This past week, I ran across a video on YouTube, whereas there's a Falcon beat writer that put a video up on his page. It was on somebody else giving the Atlanta Falcons a grade, and they gave them an F- for the move they made. And I'm saying to myself, this guy is the beat writer. What's going on here? He covers them every week.
Yeah.
He writes an article about him with the AJC. You know what I'm talking about. I know you're watching the video. So obviously you got some deep jealousy for somebody that's running the organization. The Falcons, to me, they had to be very aggressive in the draft. Let's be realistic. They go 7-10 next year. Terry Fontenot is going to get fired. There's a situation that Raheem Morris might get fired. They blew a 6-3 lead last year. They had a 3-game lead in the division, and they ended up losing that and didn't even have a winning record at the end of the year. Now, regardless what happened with the Kirk Cousins situation, all that, that's out of the door. But I admire them, especially Terry Fontenot. He realized the need. In this division, obviously, he didn't see any corners that he can draft that can go make an impact. He needed pass rushers because the Falcons have been so horrible in rushing the passer. And we all know Tampa Bay has gotten real good in the area game now. Carolina's gotten real good. As Mr. LeBel just said, they improved in the draft. So they go up to get the young man out of Georgia. We know how good he is. Surprisingly, he was there at 15. Then they go back and get James Pierce. Now, James Pierce, I know a lot about him. I follow the University of Tennessee. The only thing with him, does he come every week? When he's on, he's on. And I understand the gamble Terry Fontenot did. You got to be able to rush the passer in this league. The Philadelphia Eagles, blueprint in the Super Bowl. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. I can't think of the young man that signed for a lot of money that had an outstanding game in the Super Bowl. He in Arizona now. You got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback. Then I'm looking at what the Falcons did that I was impressed with. They knew they couldn't get that quality corner on the side covering and give A.J. Terrell some help. But I'm telling you, the man out of Oklahoma, Billy Bowman, shouts out to Scott Case. He's a player, man. He's a guy that's a playmaker. Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame. He's a playmaker. With these first 4 picks they picked, I think they knocked it out of the box. It's going to be a lot of pressure. Don't get me wrong. The pressure is here in Atlanta. But I'm really hoping that these guys they took, I think it's going to get them on the top and they're going to be in the playoffs. That's all I have to say. I think the Falcons had a very good draft. They gambled. But one thing that sticks in my mind that Mr. Harper LeBel brings to me all the time, they lost Grady Jarrett. So that means they might be a little small on the defensive side of the ball. There might be a problem stopping the run. But I understand the gamble. You got to rush the passer in this league. Back to you, Harp.
Logan, got to rush the passer, and that's what the Falcons end up picking. They got 2 guys that can do so. Give us your insight and your perspective here with the Falcons picks.
I think with the Falcons, the last, honestly, 2 drafts, it's been high risk, high reward, right? I mean, you look last year when they drafted Michael Penix in the top 10. Everyone said, what the heck are we doing? We just signed Kirk Cousins for all this money. Well, now here we are 365 plus days later. Kirk Cousins is on the bench. You might be getting shipped out soon. And Michael Penix is started for the final half of the season and is pegged to be, the future of the Falcons franchise. As we turn it now to this year's draft, they, like you said, the main issue with the Falcons last year was they couldn't get to the quarterback. Towards the end of the year, they were getting better looks, but it still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to be an elite defense, to get sacks, get pressures. And, I mean, there were so many games where we would all be watching, and the quarterback would have 3, 4, 5, a whole day back there just waiting around, seeing whoever is open and just pick us apart. I don't think that's going to happen quite as much this year. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but we're definitely going to cause some disruptions. Now, with Jalen Walker, he is also the first Georgia player taken by the Falcons in the first or second round since the franchise started back in 1966. So that streak's over. Jalen don't got to move far. He's only in Athens. You got to go to Atlanta. He ain't going to be far. You don't even have to get you don't have to get a U-Haul or nothing. He's fine. The James Pierce one, boy, man, that was it's risky, right? Because they don't got to pick next year. They're not in the first round next year. So I think it has to work. But also, too, they're hoping that, in addition to all the offseason moves and whatnot, just looking at pure draft picks here, they drafted Rook Ororo last year from Clemson, who everyone said is a project, right? Big dude. You're hoping that he can be up there, stuff the run, like Vincent mentioned. That could be an issue. You're hoping that he can get better this year. Braylon Trice, the young man who didn't even get to play last year because he was hurt. Last year, everyone was talking about what a great pick it was. You hope that he's back and fully healthy and is going to production at a high level at the linebacking spot. But I think that with Pierce, like you said, and like Vincent mentioned, it's which one are you going to get? Because you look at the numbers, right? He's got, I believe he had 7.5 sacks last year, I believe, but he very easily could have had 4. Very easily, because I believe he had the 3rd most pressures on quarterbacks last year, which means it tells me, okay, yeah, he wasn't completing the job, but he's still applying pressure. And that's what this Falcons D-line and defense needs to do, and that's apply pressure. Now, for the rest of the draft picks, you get Xavier Watts and you get Billy Bowman to shore up your back line, right? Back your safeties. Guys, those two guys had a combined 24 interceptions last year. I mean, I love those picks. Watts in the 3rd round, I'm surprised he was still there, honestly. I'm glad we picked him up. Because the Falcons safeties, they struggled last year, right? They got Kyle Fuller, I believe, also this offseason to be that kind of vet back there. But I like these 2 picks with Bowman and with Watts. We'll see how they can develop. And then it also picked up in the 7th round. We'll see if how he does if he's just going to be a depth piece in Jack Nelson out of Wisconsin, which those guys are corn fed. They're big burly guys. So we'll see how he can do for the Falcons team. But it's a big gamble, right? It's a big gamble because if these don't hit, you're out of luck because you don't have a 1st round pick next year. But if it does work, right? If it does work, if the Falcons are competitive, if they crack a wild card spot, if they win the division, won't really matter that much where your 1st round draft pick is. You'd love to have one, obviously, but if it works the way that Terry Fontenot and the rest of the Falcons organization hopes this does, which is a pretty young team on defense too, in addition to an already, a great offense, because they didn't draft, besides the offensive tackle, they didn't go any other, offensive spots. They said they're good where they're at. So if they can just get that pressure, that's what we all said the big key was. It's pressure on the quarterback, and how well is Michael Penix going to do in now his first full year as a starter? Those are the big 2 questions I got for the Falcons after this draft and going into the season.
All right, Emmanuel, we're at time of you. We said we were going to save the best for last. First and foremost, just explain to the audience what the Falcons did in the 1st round. They took their 1st pick at 15. They had a middle of the 2nd round pick, but they traded that up to the Rams to get their 1st rounder. and the cost of that was a second round pick, a first rounder for next year. I don't know if there was a third or fourth rounder for next year. There may have been something else, but the Falcons in return did get a third round pick that they did not have previous to that. So am I missing something there? Just talk about the schematic effect of that particular trade. And then I'd love to hear your impression of James Pierce Jr.
Yeah, you didn't miss a beat at all. Matter of fact, you hit it spot on. But before I get into that, I wanted to extend a heartfelt condolences to Derek Harmon out of Oregon.
Yes.
Talking about a phenomenal young man on and off the field. You're talking about tremendous talent going to Pittsburgh. But right after he got selected, less than 24 hours after he got selected, his mom passed. So a heartfelt condolences goes out to him. I wish him the best in the future. I'm sure he will be, everything expected to be over in Pittsburgh. But having lost my mother, unexpectedly, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going to stand his test of time. So he's going to make the best of his selection. But a heartfelt condolences to him and his family, praying for their strength. But guys, contrary to what everybody thinks, Atlanta stole this draft literally with 5 picks. We stole it. And Terry Fontenot, I don't think at all his seat is hot. He's cool cucumber. But he turned this thing around to where Atlanta is looking cleaner than hospital cotton. And I mean, you talking about he didn't go in and grab like the flashiest players, but when you put these group of players together, nobody's going to stand out and become a Lawrence Taylor. But when you put this group of players together, we got a football team, guys. We got a football team that's going to contend in the division, go on into the conference, and contend in the conference as well. So what we're building for is playing against a Philadelphia Eagles, playing against a Washington Redskins. We're not even worried about the division anymore. I know last year we lost the division. The primary scope of the division was to outrun the division. That was Terry Fontenot's motto. But this year, I think it's going to surpass that motto and go on and let's go and play and contend in the conference. Now, we went and grabbed Jalen Walker, which we knew we were going to grab a Georgia player. We just didn't know which one. But Jalen Walker fell into our hands surprisingly. And you're talking about a very versatile player who can play on the edge and play linebacker as well. And the speed that he brings to our team, a sure tackler that's going to improve the tackling as well. Vincent, you mentioned we were terrible against the run. I wholeheartedly agree. But these group of players that we brought in, you talking about guys that can get hands on running back or whoever got the ball. Round 2, we traded up and got James Pierce. Guys, we got a 2-for-1 deal. There's no way in the world nobody could figure that we got 2 first-round draft picks in the first round with coming into the draft in the round with only 1 pick, and we basically gave up nothing. So we actually just traded spots and a future draft pick to get one of the top players in the draft, one of the edge rushers in the draft. You talk about James Pierce, you talk about how he fits. He doubles down on the pass rush, plays along the line phenomenally. His ability to get after the quarterback, he's long, he's lean. I think a lot of offensive tackles like to play against guys that are shorter, but this guy's going to be their height, not necessarily their weight, but he's going to be their height with long arms and has that bull rush mentality. He's not afraid of contact, so he's not going to necessarily run around offensive tackles. And one thing offensive tackles hate is having to move their feet consistently on every play. The motor that this kid has, I'm not going to say kid, this young man has, I'm telling you, he's going to make offensive tackles move their feet more times than one. And getting that offensive tackle to do that, he's not going to be able to just stick his arm out there and help out on that offensive guard. He's not going to be able to do it because the moment he comes off, the speed that Pierce has, he's gone, or Jalen has, he's gone. We already have Caden Ellis, a speedster of a linebacker. You already have to account for him on the field. So if we bring in a Jalen Walker and James Pierce, both guys with speed, going to add to the defense as well. Xavier Watts, what can I say about this guy? I wanted Malachi Starks. We didn't get him. I am so satisfied with Xavier. He wasn't even on my radar. And the fact that we got him with a 3rd round draft pick, guys, like I said, the draft didn't really start until after the 3rd round. Xavier Watts is going to be our steal. Yes, we got Jalen, we got Pierce, 2 guys that we didn't know we were going to get at that time, but Xavier is a steal for us. You're talking about a ball hawk. And we didn't just get this one. We got several that are ball hawks. We got Billy Bowman, another ball hawk. 2 guys that can find the ball on the field, much like a Malachi Starks. Not as big as Malachi Starks, but these guys can find the ball on the field. Xavier Watts had a field day last year, guys, with interceptions. Yeah, I mean, several times he was able to take the ball, to the house, score touchdowns, and this is what we need to get the Falcons defense back to doing. Atlanta has always been known as cornerbacks that can get to the ball and become ball hawks. We have somehow lost that identity somewhere along the line, and with these 2 players, Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman, I have no doubt that we will not be able to get that identity back. And then we sneak around in the 7th round and got an offensive tackle that we presumably need. We have 2 tackles that are up in years. They're still producing now, but you talking about looking forward to the future. Jack Nelson, offensive tackle out of Wisconsin, a big, huge guy, man. I mean, and this guy has speed. And I don't know if you guys have seen the footage on this guy, but to have this guy pull on a play in front of a running back, he levels everything in front of him. I haven't seen not one highlight reel where he have missed a tackle out pulling for a running back and getting out on the block. But guys, in this draft, guys, we heavily prioritize defense. We address that. I think I'm going to disagree with you, Mr. Vincent, when you said that Tampa Bay have had the best. I love you, brother, but to me, and I'm not saying that just because I'm an Atlanta Falcon fan, but it is because I'm an Atlanta Falcon fan. We've had the best draft picks in this draft, and bar none. We've addressed every position as far as need, as far as skill, as far as future. We got that in this team. I'm looking for so much from this defense. And one name that will fail to mention on that defense, Brandon Dorless, who also will come in and help stop that run, along with Ruka Hororo. We saw what Ruka Hororo brought to the defense. And I think he's going to become that guy that actually becomes a voice. We have lost that guy. We had Calais Campbell last season that was able to come in and be the voice of that defense, be that leadership, be that veteran leadership, be that voice that got the defense to doing what they were supposed to do. He is going to be that guy, Root. He's going to be that guy for us. We lost Grady Jarrett. I sorely hated that. But the future outlook, I mean, we know that it was a money thing with Grady. We know that. It wasn't about production or what he wasn't been doing on the field. But going into the future, guys, we got speed. We got sure tackling. We got youthfulness. Guys, this defense, there's no way to go but up. And I'm looking for so much more to come out of this defense. I have every confidence that Jeff Ulbrich will put all the distraction that's involved around him to the side and be able to put this defense together to where we're not only leaving the South behind, but going up into the conference and contending for championships.
All right, Emmanuel, I appreciate the insight. Let me just ask you a quick follow-up question, and this is just your opinion. Last year, you mentioned Ruka Hororo. We'd had Brandon Dorless. You mentioned him. Who else am I missing? Braylon Trice. 3 guys that really didn't get a whole lot of playing time. Braylon, obviously, because of his injury. I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, that this year's picks, the guys that we're looking at right now, Jalen Walker, I need you to play today, not tomorrow. I need you to be ready to go today. James Pierce, I need you to be ready on 3rd and short, or 3rd and actually long. Be ready right now. Xavier, you and Billy, I need you, both of you guys, right now. Mm-hmm. That's what we traded for. We gave away a future pick so that these would be the guys. Is there any thought in your mind that front office, and I'm talking about not just Fontenot, I'm talking about your head coach, your defensive coordinator, even the owner has to be involved in this and go, this is going to be a group that, well, on purpose, we're going to give a 1st-round draft pick next year to get the guys that we think that can play for us as soon as training camp opens up there in August.
Most certainly. Well, we couldn't leverage the draft. We couldn't leverage any more future draft picks because we're still under the gun of Kirk Cousins' contract. Terry Fontenot had did a phenomenal job of getting us from up under Matt Ryan's contract. So we have to do it now with the picks that we got. So we don't want to give away too many picks. But going into the future, we don't know what we have in Braylon Trice. We don't know what we have in well, we actually do know what we have in this. He got hurt last year. He's a cornerback, but we had a cornerback that got hurt last year. But I have every confidence that he'll come in and be able to produce. But Brandon Dorless, he's out on the wing. We don't know what we have in him, so he's actually going to have to come in and contend for position along with James and Jalen Walker. So that side of the line, that right hand side of the line, well, if left side if you're behind it, but that side of the line, because Troy Anderson has been injury prone for the last 3 to 4 years. So can't really depend on him. He may have the skill set to be there, but we need people on the field to perform today. And with Troy Anderson being injury prone, we still need a middle linebacker. We're going to have people that are going to actually step up and play in positions that they're not normally playing in. So yeah. Jalen may be able to have to move on to the middle, but we have to get pressure on that quarterback until we find out what we got in Braylon Trice. Jalen Walker, James Pierce are going to have to come in with the mindset that they're going to have to come in and play day one.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. At least my initial impression is that is almost a must here for the Falcons. And plus, you have Jalen Walker, who's got a national championship ring. You got Xavier Watt, who played for a national championship. Granted, they didn't win, but then you throw in James Pierce, who got to be in the playoffs. So all of these guys have big game experience that, in my opinion, helped make the decision a lot easier as to this is why we're going to select these guys. Is that also a thought process that Terry Fontenot had to go through?
Oh, most certainly. And the thing is that we need to keep in mind too, we've always been a small team. I'm piggybacking off of what Mr. Turner said, that we're small up front. We've always been a small team. We've never been a big team. But the way this team is being built right now, if you look at it and compare it to that team of the Grits Blitz, there were not a whole lot of flashy names on that Grits Blitz, but it was a group of guys that came together with the mindset where it had a skill set that contributed to the success of the Grits Blitz, that made that Grits Blitz successful. And that's the mindset I'm thinking and hoping that Terry Fontenot has. For me, Terry Fontenot gets GM of the year. He turned this draft to what it makes. We only had 5 picks. Right now, it's like we had 9 or 10. So hopefully these guys can come in with the mindset of coming in and elevating their game, as well as elevating our defense to that Grits Blitz style.
Yeah. Logan, final thoughts here as we look at not only the Falcons, but the other 31 teams that we've discussed here today.
Yeah, just kind of putting a bow on the draft. It was great. I loved kind of going through the whole process of looking at these prospect guys who, we thought were going to be day one for sure prospects, guys we were going to be middle rounds, late round steals, and it's always a great time. And then watching the draft, watching it live here was always a good time. And I did find this one stat here throughout the show, just kind of, I guess we just call it the Shadur Sanders effect, right? With his fall from we thought was going to be a first-round quarterback all the way to the 5th round. So the NFL, the views for the rounds 4 through 7 averaged 4.3 million viewers, which is a 43% increase from last year. So everyone kept watching. Everyone kept their eyes on the TV, which is what the NFL wants, obviously. But, I thought that a lot of teams did really good work here. And, I just ended here with the Falcons. I thought that ending this draft, that there's a lot of high hopes going into this year. And we'll see how all these guys see on the screen here, as well as the ones we picked up last year in the draft and throughout the offseason, how they can do as we get geared up once again for the 2025 campaign. So draft season's always a great time to be here on the program.
Yeah, it's the beginning of the year. Vincent, we'll close with you here today.
Hey, outstanding information today. Love the draft. Love what teams done. Now let's get to the season. Going to be very interesting how we go into training camp. So many subplots. the AFC North must-see TV. I'm going to say it again. Can you imagine Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, Shedeur Sanders in Cleveland, Lamar Jackson in Baltimore? Help me, Jesus. Joe Burrow at Cincinnati. And then, of course, locally in the NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons, you made some bold moves. But however, I'm still saying the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are still the best team in the division, like it or not. Like it or not. Let's get this football season started, baby. It's just around the corner. Back to you, Harper LeBel.
Yeah, when you win the division 4 years in a row, you're the team to beat. So that's what Tampa has going for it. And we'll see how it all turns out, folks. This has been a summary here and a reaction that we've had regarding the draft itself and certain teams and their positioning and how they were able to assist, aid, and to help themselves to fight for that Vince Lombardi trophy that they'll be fighting for next January and February on the early portion of 2026. But the NFL season now has officially begun. Of course, the season begins in April 1st, and then the draft is usually at the end of that time period. Free agents still available. There are some guys, as Vincent just said a moment ago, we'll be fighting to see who Aaron Rodgers goes with if he decides to do this, or if he pulls a Tom Brady and a Brett Favre and says, after all this, I'm going to retire. It'll be interesting to see how many people exchange their different opinions and views on that. But anyway, so we want to thank you for being a part of today's show. Thank you for being a part of 100 Yards of Football. This is our 2025 draft summary and reaction. Emmanuel McFarland, thank you for joining us here today. Emmanuel, quickly tell us where we can find you here on different podcasts that you've been a part of.
Oh, my goodness. You can find me just about everywhere. Like I said, I love talking football, specifically Atlanta Falcons football. You can find me on just about every Atlanta Falcon content creative page. I don't have time to go through a whole lot of go through everybody's name, but I appreciate you guys having me on here on 100 Yards of Football. You can also find me on Come On In Sports Network.
Yep.
It's a great group of guys in there. We have fun just like I have here. But these guys here, man, I'll tell you, when they asked me to be a part of this show, I didn't hesitate. Just like when Vincent and I talked, didn't hesitate. I love having fun talking Falcon football, especially with somebody that's an historian. I learned so much from you guys, and I'm still learning the ropes on this thing. So way of interacting with people. So when it comes to this podcast, but guys, I appreciate you guys having me on, and let's do a show too. And this is just an idea to do a show about the undrafted free agents that can make an impact. Because I believe that a lot of these guys, because we found one in Nate Landman. I don't know if you guys remember him, but we found him on undrafted free agent. He came in and got a starting job here. He's no longer with us, sad to say, because I'd love to have kept him. But let's do a show on the undrafted free agents as well. But I can be found on YouTube, Twitter, all the platforms, Twitter, TikTok, and like I said, it's countless other Instagram, all under Atlanta Falcons Fandemic. And like I said, guys, I appreciate you guys having me on, give it a chance to get my voice out there, sharing views with you guys. I'm learning so much still with you guys. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Harper. Pleasure to meet you, Vincent and Landers. A pleasure to meet you guys. But I've had so much fun, and I said, and this won't be the last show, and there'll be a lot more in the future.
Yeah, well, Come On In Sports Network is where you would go, and then the Falcons Fandemic, is the specific show that he's been a part of. And we know he said he learned a lot of things, and I learned that he still has a bitter taste in his mouth every time he has to say anything that deals with New Orleans or the Saints. And so there's a truth in that. It just has its way of edging. So Logan, thank you so much for everything that you did, our producer and engineer, and of course for Vincent Turner, our co-host and founder here with 100 Yards of Football. We want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody, again, for the final time, the 2025 NFL Draft Summary and Reaction. We appreciate everybody being a part of the show. Have a fantastic rest of